Guys, I'm just gonna go ahead and call it right now. I'm gonna call it right now. The Night King's coming back. The Night King is coming back. This is not how it ends. I don't know if you'll are aware, but there's this there are these books. There's this whole long book series called A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's put in a lot of prophecy, a lot of foreshadowing, lots of work has been done to lead up to some of these moments, and there's certain suggestions of how things are gonna go, and I don't think it's gonna end with Jon Snow hanging out here like a ball sack on the battlefield while Arya Stark defeats the Night King. I don't think that's how it ends. Let me get rid of my text here. We don't need that. Because there's all this stuff. So you got like Nissa, for instance, the story of Nissa and Azor Ahai, which is about. Let me set up my window here. It's about how, like, sacrifice is required to get shit done. That's one of the ongoing themes throughout this story. Only death can pay for life. And there was surprisingly little death in this episode, right? I mean, who died? We had our boy Edison Tollett. He bit it pretty early on. Melisandre died at the end. I thought that was actually quite beautiful, the death of Melisandre. That was very appropriate for her character. She was sort of going to rest. Did Ghost die? He like charged off into the Dothraki, along with the Dothraki, into the undead army, and I did not see Ghost come back. Jorah did, which was impressive. And yeah, Jorah cocked it. Liliana Mormont died after stabbing a giant through the eye, so you know that's a fair way to go. Beric Dondarrion died. That was pretty sad. He did not do a fiery sacrifice, did he? I was expecting something much higher temperature for our boy Beric, but no, he just sort of cacked it. And Jon didn't really do anything. And the reason why I'm certain that the Night King will come back is that, like, you know, Jon has been staring down the Night King since Hardhome. Like, let's pull up season 5 Night King. Like, remember that scene in Hardhome where Jon and the Night King like stare each other down? Like, this is it. Like, this is the rivalry. This is how it's gonna end. With Jon Snow and the Night King staring each other down. There's no way Arya comes along and stabs him with the cat's paw blade and ends it like that. Where's that shot from? Oh, I can't find it. But, man, look, it was a good episode. It was emotionally involved. Like, that got my heart a beating when, like, you know, the Dothraki rode out to meet the army of the dead. And, you know, when Melisandre lit their arrax. Like, that was beautiful. And then it was just silence, and just no one came back. And Daenerys is there going like, oh boy, this is bad. Like, the build-up, like, the first, 40 minutes of this episode were pretty sublime, I thought. We had that mid-air dragon battle stuff, and then we had the White Walkers bring in their dark fog, which gives us the sense that the White Walkers are, like, these magical, wintry creatures, right? The White Walkers are meant to represent winter and death and darkness, so the fact that they represented that, I thought was good. And then we had Theon in the Godswood, and Theon dies. Theon was the most significant death, which I think was a very appropriate death for him. Bran going, "Oh, you're a good man, Theon." That's all he really needed. And yeah, so we had the shit on the walls. We had the retreat. Yeah, so much for the dragons won't be in the field, right? Remember last episode when Jon Snow was like, you know, we're not going to put the dragons in the battle because that would just be OP. That would be too effective if we used dragons against the zombies. They used dragons against the zombies and it was fine. You know, those Olympic spears were no problem. Melisandre's moment of lighting the trenches. That was Yeah, no, I actually think Melisandre was one of the better bits of this episode, because Melisandre's whole recent arc has been about like her faith and her crisis of faith, and just saying like and her doubting herself after Stannis dies, and then her faith resurging when she resurrects Jon, and now she uses her fiery R'hlloric magic to help out in the Battle of Winterfell and to send Arya off to kill the Night King, and then she dies. I think that was perfect. But yeah, just to talk about like what I think will happen. So you know that tree, right? You know that tree in the far, far north where the White Walkers were created. This one. I think what we'll see next episode, and I think it might have been Lucifer Means Lightbringer, a YouTuber who suggested this, but I think that we will cut to this icy tree, which is where the Night King was created, and I think the Night King will like re-emerge from it, or there'll be some new Night King who will emerge from this tree in the far north. Like maybe it'll be at the end of next episode, they'll have the Night King emerge from the tree or something, just because it isn't really what we saw. It just doesn't. It doesn't sufficiently bring together the threads of prophecy and sacrifice and magic that have been built on through this entire series. Like it's fucking cool that Arya got to kill the Night King, but it just doesn't complete Jon's prophetic arc or Daenerys' prophetic arc. They've got to be more involved in the death of the Night King. Like this can't be the end of the Battle of Ice and Fire that's been set up all this time. And, you know, are they really going to spend 3 episodes dealing with Cersei? Maybe they will. Maybe I'm wrong. Because, you know, it's like the whole Lord of the Rings thing, right? Like, the ending of Game of Thrones has been compared to the ending of the Lord of the Rings, where, you know, the hobbits, you know, they defeat Sauron, and then there's this whole chapter at the end where they go back to Hobbiton and they deal with Saruman, who's become Sharky, and and that's this whole epilogue that happens. So, yeah, maybe it's over. Maybe it is done. And Arya was the prince that was promised after all. Because yeah, I mean, if the Night King doesn't come back, they've just been misleading us. Like, the entire Azor Ahai prophecy is just a total red herring. And that's not usually how these prophecies work. Like, usually these prophecies, they happen in unexpected ways. Like, you know, Cersei's Valancourt thing, like everyone thinks that, she thinks that Tyrion will kill her, but a lot of people reckon that it'll be Jaime that kills her, whatever, you know? So like, prophecies fulfill themselves in unexpected ways. It'd be pretty weird if the prophecy just didn't add up to anything at all. So I think the Night King has to come back. All right, let's answer some super chats. Epic Ronan says, Endgame. Yeah, Marvel, Avengers, Endgame, and this episode in one day. Surprised I didn't have a heart attack. Well, yeah, I think a similar number of people... Oh, actually, well, I won't... All right, don't worry, we won't do Endgame spoilers. I know people are sensitive about those. But yeah, it's a nice comparison that both of those pop culture apocalypses happen in the same day. Jason Rattray says that Beric saves Arya. Arya kills the Night King. That was a good cause for 6 resurrections. Yeah, that's a good point. Because, yeah, Beric didn't... I was expecting Beric to go out in a more, like, overtly magical way, whether by, like, giving up his own life, or, you know, fucking exploding into fire in a way that sort of, like, you know, Melisandre did that fire thing. Oh, Gendry I thought was toast. There was this one moment halfway through the episode where Gendry was looking real unsafe, but he got through it. Jason asks, how injured is Drogon? Well, he looked okay at the end, didn't he? I really liked Daenerys' last shot, when Drogon, like, curled around her and the body of Jorah. This shot here was how Daenerys ended. And this is, like, exactly how Jorah would like to die, right? Like, you know how Tyrion talks about, like, oh, I'd like to die at the age of 80 with a girl on my cock? Jorah would like to die at the age of 45 with Daenerys giving him a hug, and a dragon hug around that. That's a very appropriate end for Jorah. And yeah, as you say, Jason, I think that was an appropriate end for Beric. Because what else is his destiny for if not putting the person who kills the Night King on the path to kill the Night King? It was very Jesus-y, I thought, when Beric was attacked. When Beric was attacked, I'm trying to organize my shots. Yeah, here. Yeah. If that's not a Christ shot, I'm not sure what is. Is the internet up? Fuck. Can you all... All right. There seems to be a bit of lag happening, but whatever. This is a very, like, Jesus-like shot when Beric has his arms out in the T-pose. and he's getting killed by the White Walkers. That is a crucifixion, if ever I've seen one. This is the guy who dies, he gets resurrected, this is his crucifixion, and now he's dying for the sins of humanity, and he's sending Arya off to kill the Night King. So I think that's very much a Jesus thing. But yeah, still, I think the Night King comes back. Film Cram says, so you don't accept Arya as Azor Ahai? What if this is subversive screenwriting and we never saw it coming? Well, I think there's a lot of subversive, interesting ways that that the Night King could be defeated. For instance, if Jon Snow got transformed into a new Night King, and if Daenerys had to stab Jon in the heart with dragonglass, that would be a really shocking, sacrificial, surprising, subversive way to end the story. And it would be in keeping with the prophecy and stuff that we've seen. Because it would fit the whole Nissa thing. And, like if we want to get, like, nuts and bolts about it, like, one of the things about the Prince that was promised prophecy, at least in the books, is the idea that the Prince that was promised is born of the line of Aerys and Rhaella. That's related to Jenny's song, which was discussed, which was sang last episode. So that's one of the reasons why Arya can't be the Prince that was promised, because she's not of the Mad King. And yeah, sure, maybe the show's just is changing from the books. But like all the showrunners and George Martin and all these people have been saying that, oh, hey, we're going to have the same ending. Like most of the main characters, all the important stuff will be basically the same. That's why I'd be shocked if that's why I'd be shocked if the Night King is really gone, because in the books it really just would make no sense if Arya killed the Night King in the books. Well, not that there is a Night King in the books, so maybe that's a reason for things to be different. I'll answer some more super chats. Sam M says, was the Azor Ahai Prince that was promised even mentioned in the show? Yes, we had a scene in season 7 where Melisandre rocked up and was like, I think that the Prince that was promised is either Daenerys or Jon or both. I mean, Melisandre, after she resurrected Jon in season 6, was like, the Lord let you come back for a reason. Stannis was not the prince that was promised, but someone has to be. And then in episode 4, she says, yep, Jon Snow is Azor Ahai. And then in season 7, Melisandre rocks up at Dragonstone, and she's like, the prince that was promised, it can mean prince or princess, which means like Jon and or Daenerys can be Azor Ahai. And both of you have a role to play in the prophecy. And I don't think that what Jon and Daenerys did this episode was a sufficient role in the prophecy. Theirs is the Song of Ice and Fire, not Arya's. So I don't think that's how it ends. I don't think that's how it ends. Maybe I'm in denial. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm too attached to the books. But I don't think Arya kills the Night King. Thank you, Bill Daly. Road Rage says, Bran definitely did something crazy while warging. No way Night King is done. Yeah, that's a really good point. Because throughout this entire episode, Bran was... where is he? Let me pull up Bran. Bran was just in his wheelchair, and we saw him fly north. I think it was north. This shot was so great. Melisandre entering Winterfell, and you got the beam of light with the darkness either side, and Melisandre is the shadow in the light. And her whole thing about the duality of light and dark, and the power of shadows being born from the light and all that stuff. Man, Melisandre was great in this episode. I think maybe in the explained video we'll do it like character by character rather than like chronologically maybe, because there was so much happening at once. Like all these different story threads were all happening at the same time. But yeah, Bran, what was he doing this whole episode? He got into some ravens, he flew off, and we never saw what he was doing. Like, I was expecting Bran to warg into a dragon, because, the whole thing with Bran is like, you will not walk again, but you will fly. So lots of people have been saying that Bran will warg into a dragon in the end game. And when everything was looking really grim, I thought he was going to like warg into Drogon and kill the Night King or something. But not yet. Not yet. This was really fucking cool when they flew above the clouds and then they're in this sort of higher astral plane battling the Night King. That's when I thought Bran might get involved, actually, because that looks like a perfect sort of, magical realm for the battle with the bad guys to happen. But alas, no. I thought this scene was really great when Arya went into the Winterfell library. And she had this intimate dance with death, is I think what it is. Because, Arya's whole story is about, dealing death, avoiding death, being surrounded by death. And this was her sort of moment of engaging with death and not today and seeming so very close to the end. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Super Kenru. Michael says, loving the Lich King comments. So Michael's referring to, apparently in World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. There's this whole thing where this, spoilers for this 20-year-old game, but there's this bad guy called the Lich King, and the way the story ends is when a good guy has to sacrifice himself to become the new Lich King bad guy so that he can control the bad guy's armies and call them off. And so it's like this sacrificial moment. And yeah, I think that is one of the possibilities of how it might end in Game of Thrones. Tulani says, is Rhaegal dead? Yeah, I don't know. At first, like when that undead dragon came, I thought that undead dragon was Drogon, because Drogon got all of the zombies crawling up in his shit. And I thought that Drogon killed Viserion, but then Drogon got turned into a zombie dragon. But that's apparently not what happened. Drogon survived. Or maybe it's Rhaegal who became the zombie dragon. Or maybe the zombie dragon was always Viserion. I got confused. It was moving quite quickly. We'll sort that out for the video. But yeah, good question. Hugh Tubin says, we have 3 episodes with no White Walkers. Do you predict 2 more setup episodes and then a climax? I still reckon the Night King will come back. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the Night King will come back. But I suppose it's possible that we spend the next 3 episodes dealing with Cersei. So I would imagine the next episode would be about like the aftermath of this battle, and then maybe the next episode is about arriving at King's Landing, and then maybe Cersei dies at the end of season 5, and then season 6 is like epilogue, A Dream of Spring type stuff. I suppose that's possible. Let me pull up the. All right, thank you, Zip Girl. Thank you, Richard Tongerman. Yeah, Richard asked, why didn't Bran warg into Theon? Yeah, that was another thing that I thought could have happened and could have been really cool. Because, Bran warged into Hodor, so that we know that Bran can take over human bodies, but he didn't. I wonder if... I mean, you get the sense this whole time that Bran knows what's going to happen. Everything's part of the plan. So maybe Bran knew that Arya would kill the Night King. But I wonder if Bran knows that things continue after all of this. Yeah, I don't think that Arya is Azor Ahai. Because, I mean, like, one of the things that I liked about this episode is that we did get a lot of magic. We did get a lot of blue icy dragons, and we got fire from below, and we had the darkness, and we had the dragons battling above the clouds. Like it actually felt like some kind of world-ending apocalyptic scenario, which I think is important, because Game of Thrones, it tends to be more grounded than the books, which I think is a good thing in terms of making it more like relatable, and it's something that people can take seriously and they don't feel embarrassed for watching fantasy. But this is the War for the Dawn, and it should be really magical and intense and crazy and astral. It should feel apocalyptic. It should feel like there are deities involved in this conflict. And I think they did capture that. But yeah, I think the Night King's coming back. Andrew asks, are we assuming Ghost is dead? Yeah, Ghost appeared at the start of the battle, did not turn up at the end, so I think he's fucked. Jason says, more people should have died. The show's gotten too soft as they went off book. Yeah, I was surprised that Grey Worm survived. And yeah, both Grey Worm and Missandei survived. Maybe they'll be like the first people to die when the Night King comes back. I would enjoy that. Because like if they are gonna have the Night King come back, if they are gonna have a big shocking thing happen, the best way to communicate that would be with a really terrible death, and perhaps and a death that we care about. So Missandei or Grey Worm, I think, could work for that. Thank you very much for the kind super chat. Two Face said. Thank you to Karen. Happy 30th birthday, Mark. Valentin RL says the whole episode was Bran's mind battle. Yeah, I think you might be right. Because what we saw was Bran warging into ravens and then flying off somewhere, and then he was just AFK for the entire episode. Like, he was just warg white eyes the whole time. he must have been doing something. I reckon he was flying north. He was flying into the heart of winter with his ravens, and he was doing some kind of serious psychic work where it matters, while everyone else was dealing with the more mundane matter of fighting the army of the dead. The Road Rage says, couldn't Cersei be the darkness that Azor Ahai is meant to defeat? Yeah, well, some of the contrarians reckon that Jaime Lannister is Azor Ahai, and that maybe Cersei is his Nissa Nissa, meaning that, like, maybe Jaime will kill Cersei, and that'll be the fulfillment of the prophecy, which... that could be cool. I mean, again, like, you know, there's all this stuff in the prophecy suggesting that, like, Daenerys or Jon has to be Azor Ahai, like, you know, sons of the Mad King, unless Jaime's a kid of the Mad King. But again, like, that's not really related to the show so much. Someone says, stop being tinfoily, alt shift X, the Night King is dead. Yeah, maybe. I reckon it'd be better if the Night King came back, but you might be right. All right, so what did Jon Snow accomplish this episode? He flew around on the dragon, he fought Viserion. I like how right at the very end he just popped up his face to face Viserion and likely be killed by him. This moment right here of Jon Snow being like, all right, I've faced death before. I can do this again. I love how Jon Snow constantly throws himself into near certain death situations and just keeps on surviving. I mean, one time he didn't, but he has a tendency of doing that. This moment here is one of my favorite shots in Game of Thrones when he stands up and just faces death with the charging cavalry. I think he does that again with the dragon here. We have a super chat from... Man, that's such a shitty interface. Two-Face said, yeah, I forgot to say cheers, mate. Ryan says, after Dany becomes the antagonist and tries to use Drogon to kill Jon, Bran walks into the dragon to kill Dany. Nah, man. A lot of people are really enamored with the idea of, like, a evil queen Daenerys. They reckon that Daenerys is just going to go, like, full evil in the end. Let me get a shot of Dany. A lot of people think that Daenerys is just going to become this fiery tyrant who just wants to seize power at any cost. And you know, since they are creating a little bit of tension between, like, Daenerys and Sansa and Jon here, you know, some people think that Daenerys will just want to burn them all and she'll, like, burn King's Landing and all this crazy stuff will happen. But I think that what Daenerys' story is about, like, it's very much about that tension between her more, like, tyrannical side and her more, like, compassionate, compromising side. And I think the right way to, like, end that story is not by her failing and just going full evil. I think it'll be tragic. Like, I think Daenerys will die probably, but I think it needs to be... It's not going to be by going full one way or the other in terms of either peace or tyranny. Like, I think she's just got to make some sort of awkward, terrible choice, but not one that makes her like, well, she was terrible this whole time. You know, like, I don't think they're going to write off Daenerys as a character. She's still got to remain relatable. Otherwise, like, what's the point of her? You know. Wolf Down Under says, surely after all that build-up, all that mystery, that's not the end of the White Walker storyline. Yeah, I agree, Wolf. I mean, you know, like, I could believe that the Night King died in episode 3 of the final season. I could believe that it ended, like, quickly and early like that. But not in a way that felt without cost. I think that's the strongest argument for the Night King coming back, because, like, the constant undercurrent of magic and the Great War and the prophecy throughout this story is about the sense that only death can pay for life, and you need great sacrifice to achieve great things, and not a whole lot of people died. I mean, maybe you can see Theon as the big sort of sacrificial death because he was the biggest death in this episode. But, like, you know, are we really making Theon into Nissa Nissa, you know, the ultimate sacrifice? Like, all the prophecy suggests that it's about, you know, someone killing someone who they love deeply. But that wasn't a decision that was made. There was no moment in this episode where someone was like, okay, I have to give up on the one that I love in order to save the world. It was just Theon being like, well, I got to complete my storyline. So, yeah, I don't think it's quite enough for Arya to end her. And Moxie Ferg agrees. Nijo says, why did the other White Walkers die when the Night King died? Yeah, so the idea is that when you kill a White Walker, all of the zombies that he raised die. I suppose the idea is that when you kill the Night King created all the other White Walkers, I guess. presumably by the same process that he converts babies. Remember in season 4, when the baby is taken beyond the wall, and the Night King puts a finger on him and he changes into a blue-eyed White Walker person. I guess the Night King must have done that to humans back in the day to create the other White Walkers. Tyler says, Littlefinger forged Lightbringer. He killed Joffrey and his lover Lysa, and his dagger killed the Night King. Alright, that's interesting. So maybe we're going to say that Littlefinger is Azor Ahai and Arya is Lightbringer. Okay, just to explain that. So one of the legends of Azor Ahai is about how Azor Ahai, he needed to forge a burning sword to defeat the darkness and the bad guys. And the way he did it was that he first plunged a sword into water, but then the sword broke and it wasn't enough. And then he plunged a sword into a lion, and then the sword broke again. But then he plunged a sword into the one he loves, and then it was successful. He made Lightbringer. So you could say that Littlefinger. So what? The lion is Tyrion, is it? And then the water is something, and then Lysa is the one he loves, and then Arya is the weapon who kills the Night King. Yeah, that could almost kind of make sense. I mean, again, like, I don't think Littlefinger is Azor Ahai because he's not tied into the, Targaryen bloodline and all that, but it's a cool idea. Big Successor says, if there are implications for killing the Three-Eyed Raven, what are the complications for killing the Night King? Does Arya slowly become the Night King? Ooh. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like, I guess they could take this from like a, cosmic balance sort of a vibe where like there must always be a Night King and there must always be a Three-Eyed Raven, and everything's all messed up if that balance is disturbed. I mean, that could be an interesting way to play it. And the idea of Arya becoming the Night King, I mean, I don't think that's likely, but that could be cool. Maybe the person who kills the Night King becomes the new Night King. I don't think there's anything to like suggest that that's how that works, but that would be cool. It's interesting that Arya's whole storyline is about like her becoming an agent of death, and then here in the show it culminates in her killing the agent of death. Like Arya's whole thing is about embodying death, and here she ends death by killing the Night King. One of the other things is that Arya's catchphrase that they repeat in this episode is, "What do we say to the god of death? Not today." And so then Night King is killed by Arya, and that's Arya saying "not today." But like the whole the subtext of "not today" is, well, maybe tomorrow. It's about putting off death. You never defeat death. You never kill death entirely. You only put it off for another day. And maybe that's what happened with the Night King. Arya delayed the Night King another day. Metalbat says, Season 6, Arya can't have been stabbed. Season 7, the Northern Lords can't stay loyal to Ramsay. Season 8, the Night King can't have been killed. Yeah. Yes, so there have been lots of times in this show when crazy things have happened, and then people have been like, oh, that can't possibly be what happened. That can't possibly be how it ends. The showrunners had to have something crazy up their sleeve. There had to be some other explanation for this. Something else crazy is going to happen. And it does feel like every time we think that, that's not how it turns out. So, like, for example, Season 6, Episode 7, Arya gets stabbed up rather badly by the waif. She gets all these stab wounds in her, then she jumps into a dirty-ass canal and gets some good sewer water into her open wounds, and then the very next episode, she's doing parkour across the streets of Braavos and kills the waif. Because, like, after Season 7, everyone was like, well, okay, they've set up all these mechanics about people with, faces who can change their faces and take on different identities. Arya's been learning about acting, so maybe this is fake somehow, and maybe that's not really Arya, and that's someone in someone else's face. People came up with all these interesting explanations, alternatives to, like, what they saw, that might be more complex and interesting, and then people were disappointed. And then, yeah, in Season 7, like, everyone was shocked that the Northern Lords were just cool with Ramsay, because in the books there's this whole conspiracy against the Boltons and stuff, but that turned out to be wrong. So maybe we are falling into that trap again by saying that, the Night King can't possibly have been killed by Arya. This can't possibly be the end. It'll be something more. Something else will happen. Something more complicated. Maybe we'll just be disappointed again. It's possible. We'll have to wait and see. We got a super chat from Tedesca, who says, "Who was Azor Ahai? I'm disappointed in Night King's death." Yeah, well, we've been talking about that. I don't think it makes sense for Arya to be Azor Ahai. Melisandre told us in season 7 that Jon and Daenerys have a role to play. And all the books suggest that it's got to be Jon or Daenerys killing the Night King, I think. Installer Gaming says, so what was the Night King's mission? Was it really just to kill everyone and assert dominance against the whole world? What about the whole reveal? Like, who the hell is he? Yeah, so, look, I don't know if we'll ever get a reveal about, like, the identity of the Night King, because I don't think that that's something that they've really talked about in the show. I think we can make a fair guess that the Night King might be a Stark, given, like, how Stark's involvement back then. Oh yeah, the title is wrong. It says episode 2 when we're talking about episode 3. Let me just put a 3 on top of that real quick. 3. Okay. Gonna just put. Oh, that's wrong. Let's do that now. That's upside down. There we go. Put a 3 on top of the 2. Okay, we good. This is professional. This is Alt Shift X. We good. All right. Anyway, so we got a super chat from Jay Cantu, who says, "What do you make of the scene between Sansa and Tyrion?" Yeah, that was one of the best moments, wasn't it? So we had Sansa and Tyrion hiding in the crypts of Winterfell, and then surprise, surprise, the crypt has dead people in it. Who would have thought that there would be dead people in the crypts? I, for one, was shocked. So then the dead people in the crypts came out and started making more dead people, and that was spooky. And then you had Sansa and Tyrion holding hands and having this really touching, emotional moment of like, hey, we were husband and wife once. You know, we treated each other decently. Let's have a last moment of just human intimacy and decency and just human contact before everything turns to shit. I thought that was a really nice moment. And yeah, I guess the crypts were not as wild as people thought they might have been, because everyone knew that, you know, something bad would happen in the crypts because they said that they're safe 15 times last episode. But, you know, in the books, like, it's about the Stark Kings rising, and there's all these weird implications about, like, the crypts having some connection to, like, defense against the White Walkers, because, you know, the crypts were the first original part of Winterfell that was built, apparently right after the previous Great War and everything. The point being that, you know, people were expecting something a little bit more magical and crazy. Just turned out to be zombies in the crypts, which is not that crazy. Someone in a super chat says that, well, how's Cersei going to stand a chance in the next 3 episodes? And I think that's another argument for the Night King coming back, because you're right. Like, if the Night King doesn't come back, the next 3 episodes are about Cersei versus Jon, Daenerys, Jaime, Brienne, Sansa, Tyrion, Grey Worm, Missandei. You know, every character is opposed to Cersei, which doesn't seem like a fair fight, does it? I mean, it could. I mean, maybe what the next 3 episodes will be about is about, like, Tyrion somehow, like, helping Cersei and somehow betraying the good guys. Like, or maybe Jaime. Like someone with a personal connection to Cersei has to help her in some way. Otherwise, like, yeah, I don't see how Cersei could possibly oppose the people who came to take the throne back off her. Ryan Rush says, did you think Jaime added value as a military commander? Well, we didn't see Jaime commanding anyone any more than not any more than in the sense that he was just shouting things like, come on and hold, like everyone else was during the battle. I thought that was quite funny. Like, whenever they were trying to do a retreat or some kind of tactical army move during the battle, all the named protagonists just shouted things like, move and grab the things and hold fast, as though that would be helpful. How noisy would it be in that battle? My goodness. Grey Worm says, did Grey Worm close the gates on the Unsullied during the retreat? Yeah, I think that did happen. There was a point at which the Unsullied were helping everyone retreat inside the walls of Winterfell, and they were like stepping back, and then Grey Worm like closed the thing behind them so that I think all the Unsullied died, I think. Which was like this emotional moment of Grey Worm sacrificing all his peers, which is like, Jesus Christ, Wormsy, that was dark. So yeah, that was crazy. And Ed was the first named character to die. I can't believe that Dolorous Ed's last words were, "Oh God, Sam." Like, isn't that a Gilly line? Ed dying like that is pretty crazy. But well, I mean, in the books he would have said something much more dolorous, is I suppose what I'm trying to say. But it made sense that Ed died. Josh says all this build up for the Night King, and that was it. Yeah, I don't think that's it. I hope that's not it. Bobby says, do you think being exposed to Dragonfire allowed the Night King to be finished off once and for all? Yeah, well, when you try and open a jar, and it's really hard to get the jam jar open, and you're like just going at it, and then someone else comes along and just goes dink, pop. Well, you say you loosened it for you. I loosened it for you, mate. Maybe Daenerys just loosened the Night King for everyone by burning him. Just sort of softened him up a bit. Got the pork crackling so that he was nice and tender for Arya to carve off the side of Night King. Maybe that's what happened. Brinks says, with Jaime's fever dream in the books, I always thought it might be hinted that he could be Azor Ahai. Maybe Sir Brienne would be his Nissa. Thoughts? Yeah, so that's another surprising thing. Neither Jaime nor Brienne died. A lot of people were expecting one or both of them to die because, their arcs seem so well wrapped up. At least Brienne's does, because, Brienne has become a knight. She's got the recognition and the acknowledgement that she's always wanted. So, it seemed like a perfect time for her to, sacrifice herself saving Jaime or vice versa. Jaime, I think Jaime still has unfinished business with Cersei. And I think that's why Jaime probably couldn't die this episode. But I'm surprised that both of them survived. I was really expecting a lot more major characters to die this episode. Really, the only significant death was Theon, I would say. Plus, what is it, Lyanna Mormont. All right, let's make a list. Everyone shout out in the chat who has died, just so we can figure this out. I think it's a good idea to put text on the screen just to figure this out. So let's make a list of... So who's died? It's been... it was Ed, and it was Theon, and it was Lyanna Mormont, and it wasn't Night King. Who am I missing? I'll just put that up on screen. Can you guys see that at the top there? No deaths. Let's put that there. Deaths. Who else died? Jorah. Yeah, Jorah and Melisandre. Yeah, those are the ones I forgot. So Jorah. Man, a lot of Mormont deaths. Yeah, when Jorah last episode was like, hey, Lyanna, you are the future of our house. You really need to not die. And then he died. Oh yeah, Beric, of course. Good point. Beric. Yeah, and I think maybe Ghost? Because, Ghost didn't come back after that big cavalry charge. I fucking loved the fact that Ghost was just cantering alongside the cavalry charge. Like, Ghost is a speedy doggo, which I thought was crazy. Yeah, Kono. So Kono, for those who don't remember, is like the leader of the Dothraki, which is quite funny because in Season 6, Kono was saying some very rude things to Daenerys. But there you go. Did we forget anyone else? Alright, so there are some people in the chat saying that Ghost is alive because he appears in the preview episode next episode. So yeah, alright, let's take out Ghost. Yeah, so those are some serious deaths. Like, we care about Jorah, we care about Beric and Ed, and Theon is of course the headliner. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more tragedy before this thing is done, is what I'm saying. Yeah, and the dragon. Yeah, so is Rhaegal dead? I am a bit confused about the dragons, because Drogon was alive at the end. Viserion is gone? Did Drogon kill Viserion? Yeah, the dragon yeah. Alright, anyway, let's talk some more. So let's answer some super chats. Surf and Ollie says, any point to Melisandre taking off her necklace? Yeah, because Melisandre was very old and very tired. Melisandre had dedicated herself to the cause of protecting, of fulfilling God's will to save the world from the darkness. And it was exhausting fucking work because she was alive for like 900 years or some shit. And she had to do all these terrible sacrifices, both personally and to other people. And she was working with Stannis, and she was a slave for a long time. Like, Melisandre has a lot of fucking trauma and exhaustion and regrets inside of her. And I think her death at the end was her letting go of all that and letting go in peace and in the satisfaction of knowing that she achieved her goal. So I think that was a very appropriate death for Melisandre, and the fact that she took off a necklace is sort of just letting go of, I mean, the necklace was a deception. That was a glamour. That was a tool that she used because, her appearance was just like a tool that she used to get shit done. And I think she finally let go of that and embraced, her true underlying form, in the end. And I think that's about right. The Poos on Poos says, I wanted a sword fight between Jon and the Night King. Yeah, it really looked like that was going to happen for a moment. It looked like it was going to go mano a mano with Jon Snow and the Night King after the Night King was burned. And I mean, that's one of the ways they could have ended it, is just with Jon winning a sword fight against the Night King. I think that would have been worse than Arya killing the Night King. I think that yeah, it's all about sacrifice. It's such a strong undercurrent with the magic and the prophecy. So yeah, I think we're still going to have Daenerys or Jon die at the end, because like, what's the alternative? Like they go down and they fight Cersei, and like what? Cersei somehow like kills a whole bunch of the major characters, because like this show would be disappointing if we don't have a lot of main character deaths. Like, we need more main character deaths in the next 3 episodes. And I don't know if Cersei can achieve that. I mean, unless Cersei has something really crazy up her sleeve. Like, I don't know if it's going to be some sort of wildfire plot or something. But yeah, I don't think Cersei can get that much shit done, and I think that's part of why the Night King needs to come back. But I mean, just logistically, admittedly, like, if the Night King if the Night King comes back at this tree in the far north, this spiral tree here, like, that tree is beyond the wall. And if the Night King is going to walk all the way from beyond the wall to King's Landing or wherever, I think we'll be waiting a long-ass time. So maybe that's an argument against the Night King coming back. Cynthia says Tormund died. Did Tormund die? I didn't see Tormund die. Tell me in the chat, did Tormund die? I didn't see that happen. I thought he was cool. Someone says Clegane Bowl final climax. Yeah, I mean, maybe the White Walkers have just been a sideshow this whole time. Maybe the real conflict is Clegane Bowl. Maybe that's what it was all about in the end. Maybe Sandor is Azor Ahai, and the Mountain is the real Night King. I mean, if you want to get tinfoil, maybe what am I saying? If you want to get real tinfoil, maybe the Mountain will become the new Night King, if there is a new Night King, which there might not be. Maybe the Mountain, since he's dead, like, since he's a zombie person, maybe he's connected somehow to the darkness and the White Walkers and all of that. We got a lot of people shouting that Tormund is dead, and a lot of people shouting that Tormund is alive. Someone says that Gilly's dead. Is Gilly dead, guys? I don't remember Gilly dying, because she was down in the crypts when the skeletons started getting all spooky in the crypts. Gilly was down there, and I didn't see her die. Well, I did see one woman getting like grabbed up by a zombie. I didn't think that was Gilly. Everyone's saying. Well, some people are saying that Gilly's dead in the chat, and some people are saying that Gilly's alive. Yeah, everyone's a bit confused about Gilly. And everyone needs to rewatch this episode. But yeah, no, anyway, yeah, here's that moment people were talking about before with Sansa and Tyrion in the crypts. I thought that was quite lovely. Gren says Tormund and Rhaegal are both alive in preview. All right, yeah, okay. So neither Drogon nor Rhaegal died. Both of Dany's dragons are still alive. Then where was Rhaegal at the very end? Are we sure about that? Is Rhaegal definitely still alive? Yeah, too dark to see who's alive. There's so much darkness in these later seasons, man. You can barely see what's going on sometimes. It's ridiculous. All right, are we taking Rhaegal off the death list? We'll take Rhaegal off the death list. Everyone reckons he's alive. So yeah, not a huge number of intense deaths. Not a huge number of them. Super Anime Gamer 01 says, I'm behind on the episode. D&D. In behind the episode, D&D said they knew Arya delivered the final blow for 3 years. Did you think it came from George Martin? I've got a strong sense that that D&D are liars, pants on fire. Like, remember when Jon Snow died in season 5, episode 9? Season 5, episode 10, and they were all like, "Yep, well, Jon Snow's death, we saw it coming. It had to happen. Sad." And then for the next year, Jon Snow didn't get a haircut. Kit Harington didn't get a haircut, and everyone's like, "You telling a porky?" Maybe that's happening again. There is a precedent for D&D lying, and maybe this is another time, and maybe the Night King will come back. Or maybe this is exactly what happens in the books. Like, maybe Arya will... Well, no, except in the books there is no Night King, which is one of the weird differences. But anyway. David Ellis says, did Arya put on the face of a white? Don't think so. I didn't see that happen. I saw Arya just come wearing her own face. So I don't think so. Natalie Wiles says... Natalie Wiles asks about the preview. I don't think we'll talk too much about the next episode preview, because some people don't like to watch them early. Jack Behan says, did anyone else think the Night King was going to kneel in front of Bran? That would have been interesting. I mean, what I would have liked to have seen was like a psychic battle between the Night King and Bran. Because, remember when the Night King and Bran, had an interaction on the astral plane in season 6, episode 5? You had the Night King and Bran, because like Bran was going out and checking shit out, and then the Night King's like, hey, slides into his DMs and grabs him and puts the mark on him. So that shows that it's possible for Bran and the Night King to interact in like the world of warging and skin changing. I would have thought that's what Bran would have done during this episode when he was plugged in AFK. I'm surprised that didn't happen this episode. Maybe it'll happen later on. Akbar says, were you disappointed that the Night King got destroyed so quickly? Yeah, I think he'll come back. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Rob. Rob says, could the Night King come back through time travel? I don't think they're going to do anything too wacky with time travel. Like, we do know that Bran could interact with, Hodor in the past, but that was something that had already happened. Like, remember, time travel in this show is not like Back to the Future where you can change stuff. The past has happened. The ink is dry, the Three-Eyed Raven said. So I wouldn't expect anything like, going back in time and grabbing the baby Night King and bringing him into the future so that, or anything really crazy. I don't think Doctor Who stuff will happen. And also, why would Bran fuck with space-time after the Night King is already dead? Like, if the Night King is already dead, I don't think Bran's going to be like, well, time to dip into the space-time continuum and muck about with the time stone. I don't think that'll happen. David... BJ says, is that the same sword Bran gave Arya he knew all along? Yeah, so Arya killed the Night King with the Catspaw blade that everyone likes to call it. So that's the blade which was used by an assassin to try to kill Bran way back in season 1, episode 2. That's this blade here in the hands of this fella. And Catelyn got her hands cut up by it, and then Catelyn brought it to King's Landing, and Varys was like, ooh, Valyrian steel. And then Littlefinger said that the blade was Tyrion's, and that's why Tyrion got abducted. And then the blade was... Where was the blade after that? Because Bran got it from... Yeah, so Littlefinger just had it all series. And then Littlefinger gave it to Bran. And I think the reason why Littlefinger gave it to Bran was to, like, ingratiate himself with Bran, because he was trying to, like, make friends and influence people. Except that was a poor choice of prop, wasn't it, when Littlefinger gave the blade to Bran, because he was giving him evidence of the attempt on Bran's life. That's not really a nice... Anyway, but then Bran gave the Catspaw blade to Arya. And it seemed like a sort of momentous moment, didn't it? Almost as though Bran knew that that Arya was going to do something special with it. So, maybe that is the sort of destiny thing. And maybe the reason why Bran didn't tell anyone that he knew what was going to happen is, like, for the same reason that, oh no, that's Endgame. I'm literally remembering a line from Avengers Endgame, which is relevant here. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's actually a similar philosophy going in those two shows, I think. We have a super chat from Jess W, who says Night King walked into a backup Night King before death. Yeah, I mean, you would think that if Night King had half a brain, he would do something like that. And, again, maybe he didn't. But it's a bit dull if, like, the Night King's fatal flaw is hubris, just like every other bloody bad guy. Every other Dark Lord is too overconfident, and that's why they end up dying. If the Night King, because like Night King doesn't have to kill the Three-Eyed Raven personally, right? Like the Night King didn't need to bring any of his White Walkers into Winterfell at all, did he? He could have just swamped them with the army of the dead. But he decided to go 1-on-1 to twist the knife himself, and for that reason he got caked by Arya. So I don't know about that. XAOC says, will they say there must always be a Night King? Yeah, well, that's the line from World of Warcraft, isn't it? I'd be surprised if they quoted it. Miss Pappas says, why could the Night King sense Jon far behind him, but didn't sense Arya until the last second? Well, Arya's like a super stealth chick, right? Like, she's trained to be super quiet and stealthy. Jon has not. Jon is a northern fool who clumps along on his big northern boots, and so it's appropriate for the Night King to hear that, I think. Edgard says, why do I feel like it's a sad win? Very sad vibe. Well, I think it should have been sadder, but, I mean, there were a lot of deaths. There are a lot of... I mean, look at this. Look at these piles of corpses. I mean, our man Fergus is probably one of them. Remember that common person from last episode? His name is Fergus. He has a family, and he's dead. There are thousands of Ferguses dead. Just because there aren't many named characters dead doesn't mean we shouldn't feel sorry for all these others, I reckon. Dankfin says, if the Night King is not coming back, then Arya equals Mary Sue. I don't think Arya is a Mary Sue, because she spent 3 or 4 seasons training to kill people really good. I don't think that's a Mary Sue at all, but I do think it is kind of wrong for Arya to be the person to kill the Night King specifically. Not for reasons of power levels, but for reasons of all the foreshadowing with the White Walkers being attached to Jon and Daenerys, the Song of Ice and Fire, the prophecy of the prince that was promised. So for that reason, I think this is not over. Two Guys One Funny says, when did the zombies stop being super flammable? Yeah, so if you want to point out plot holes and stuff, like there was that point at which they lit the fiery barricade around Winterfell, but then the way the dead breached the barrier was to like pile a bunch of dead people over the barrier until they had like a bridge of corpse to cross, and imagine how that smells. But they used like bodies of the dead to like cross the fiery barricade, which shouldn't really work, because like all the other times we've seen whites burn, they have been like extremely flammable. Like you just give them a little touch and they just burst into flame. Like if we're looking like, I mean, it's happened like later than season 1, but just season 1, for example, like this fella, the first zombie we see in season 1, episode 8, like he just gets like a touch of fire and then he just goes up like a barbecue. And they've actually been like fairly consistent with that. So the fact that at this point these zombies didn't just turn into more fire is, I think, a little silly. Dan the Burger Man says, what army are they going to oppose Cersei with? Hard to believe that much survived the battle. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, maybe the way it could be like an even contest between Cersei and the rest, next few episodes could be the fact that, all of the Dothraki are dead, apparently. Most of the Unsullied are dead, I think. And, I mean, honestly, at the end, it really just looked like it was the named characters who were still trucking. Just about everyone else looked like they were goners. So I would be, I suppose it could come down to, like, Cersei has the Golden Company army, whereas the protagonists are basically, like, just the named characters, and that might actually be a fair fight. Vaughn Soul says, as a character, the Night King isn't interesting. Drama will be among the living for the rest of this show. Yeah, so I think that's a decent argument, because, like, the Night King is not a person, really. He's like a symbolic representation of, death and darkness, and what's interesting is the way that the characters respond to him. Like, the drama is not from the Night King himself, the drama is from how people respond to the Night King. I agree with that. And I think that what the show's been leading up to is drama between, Jon and Daenerys, or between Sansa and Brienne, and like those are the sorts of people whose hearts will be in conflict as a result of the Night King, and I think that's where the drama comes from, and I think that's why the White Walkers are in the story. And having Arya kill the Night King like that, I mean, her heart was not really in great conflict, I don't think. She wanted to kill the Night King, and she killed him dead. I mean, you could say that what this was about is that Arya was grappling with fear. Because, Arya had that whole thing of, like, running and being saved by Beric and the Hound, and, Beric making his Jesus T-pose. And then, Melisandre saying, like, hey, you should probably go kill the Night King. That would be quite helpful. Cheers, love. Man, isn't this crazy? Like this was the conversation that preceded Arya killing the Night King. And it was Melisandre calling back to that, quite obscure moment in, like, was it season 3? Let's pull that up. When Melisandre met Arya in season 3. And she was just coming by to visit Beric Dondarrion and Thoros. And she just, like, walked by and saw Arya and is like, ooh, I see a darkness in you. I see brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes that you'll shut forever. We will meet again. And that's a show-only scene. That's not in the books, which I think is significant. Because, like, if there was this, like, big foreshadowing of Arya doing some big important death thing, if that was in the books, I'd be more inclined to believe that this is the same ending that will happen in the books. Maybe this really is how the Night King dies in the show. It's just not how the White Walkers are defeated in the books. Maybe that's what'll happen. Thank you very much, username not invalid. Who says, each person left matches an old god or a new god. Sam is the mother, Brienne is the warrior, Gendry is the smith, Arya is the father, so on. Thanks very much for the super chat. I mean, you can often link up characters to, like, the figures in the Faith of the Seven. The Faith of the Seven is the religion, like the Catholicism of Game of Thrones. The High Sparrow and the Septons, they are of the Seven, and the Seven have these 7 gods who, like, represent 7 aspects or, like, archetypes of gods. And they're called the Maiden and the Crone and the Stranger and the Warrior and all of that. And you can sometimes link up those archetypes with characters in the show, which I think is interesting. But, like, I don't think it's deliberate. Like, there are lots of different sort of configurations, and it's sort of opinion. Like, is Sam the mother? Is Arya the father? Like, I think that's very subjective. So I think it's interesting to do that, but I don't know if there's a real sort of answer there. Josh B says, I think the Night King is done on the show. The rest of the show will focus on King's Landing. But he reckons the last scene we'll get in the entire show is another Night King waking in the north. Yeah. Maybe. Because that would sort of fix the issue of it feeling like the White Walkers were defeated a little bit too easily. And it would, continue this sense of, like, seasonal, cyclical stuff going on in the series. Because the story is very generational, it's about, like, an older generation dying and a new generation coming up, and maybe that applies to the Night King as well, insofar as he represents a force of nature. But I mean, I think that's more of a sense that we get from the books than from the show, because, like, the show's like, hey, the Night King was a dude who was programmed to kill humans, and that's what he's doing, and it would be really helpful if he died, whereas in the books, the White Walkers feel more ethereal, and they're more they feel more like a force of nature, and they haven't been said to be created by the children of the forest. But yeah, I don't know. Some continuation of the White Walkers at the end might make sense. Alex says, imagine if Night King would just bleed instead of getting shattered to pieces. What a plot twist that would be. Like, nothing can kill him, nothing can kill death. Yeah. I mean, I think we sort of had that moment when the Night King was burned by Drogon and he survived. Like, that was about showing that, like, oh god, like, the Night King is the real deal. We can't burn him up easy. The Night King is something else. The Night King is something unstoppable. Like, that was the feel that we got. Like, the Night King was playing Through Fire and Flames on expert level on Guitar Hero. Like, that smirk. Oh, like, what do they say? Guys who look like this have a 3,000% chance of stealing your girl. Like, look at that shit-eating smile. Like he is so pleased with himself. He thinks he's so cool. Is that really the face of a man who's about to get, like, porked by some Valyrian steel in 5 seconds. I mean, you know, I did like that when Arya killed the Night King. Man, I can't believe I'm saying that sentence. Arya was grabbed by the throat by the Night King, and then she dropped the blade from one hand, and she caught it with the other hand, and then stabbed the Night King. Which is the same move that she used on Brienne last season. Brienne was fighting Arya, was sparring, and she dropped the blade from one hand to the other. So that's a cool little callback. But again, like, I think that the victory in the War for the Dawn should be connected to something deeper in terms of like prophecy and symbolism and sacrifice than like a cool reference to season 7. Because, like, you know, why else has, you know, Melisandre been giving, you know, Jon those, like, you know, sultry gazes since like season 4? Like Jon Snow has been set up as, like, you know, the guy who stands against the darkness for so long. Yeah, season 4, episode 10, you had Melisandre looking very knowingly at Jon Snow across, like, fire. And then she resurrects Jon and does all this stuff. Like, what was the point of, you know, was Jon really needed in that battle? I mean, what's the most that Jon accomplished in that battle? Was it, you know, burning some of the undead with the dragon? Jon didn't have to be on the dragon for the dragon to do that. Joe, thank you. Joe says, most disappointing thing tonight was that the episode was really dark. It was so dark I couldn't see shit on his TV. Did Stevie Wonder direct this episode? It was very dark. Yeah, I found it difficult to see what was going on sometimes. I think this, like some of this shit, like what, a lot of darkness, and a lot of quick cuts. I mean, I think overall it was really quite. I think it was well shot mostly. I think you just need to see it on like Blu-ray quality on a real nice screen with some real good blacks in order to see it properly. Streaming this episode, as a lot of people are, is not a very high quality way to watch it, which is unfortunate. Ryan Sheen says that the Night King represents Protestantism. Thanks. How does the Night King represent Protestantism, Ryan? I don't know. TV for Fun 2 says, am I the only one who thought of Sephiroth when the Night King came out of those flames? Who's Sephiroth? Is that some kind of a Power Ranger? I'm not sure. Caligulov says that the show has gotten pretty lazy. I bet the War for the Dawn is over. Maybe. Because, you know, the show has done a lot of surprising things. Like, they spent the first 2 episodes of season 8 like just chilling in Winterfell, just setting up relationships and politics, and not moving the action along very much. Season 3, I mean, isn't it? Wouldn't it be crazy if the entire War for the Dawn took place in one episode, and it just doesn't come up again, and the next 3 episodes are about Cersei? Wouldn't that be a crazy division? Like think of the pie chart. Let's draw up the pie chart. Hold on, where's MS Paint? Let's bring up the MS Paint. Delete that. MS Paint is being annoying. How do you select? Okay, let's just move that out of the way. Oh, what the fuck? I don't know how to use MS Paint. All right, let's open a new document. Okay, so let's make the pie chart. If we've got red circle to represent season 8. Okay, so that's season 8. And then we have how do I get the brush? So we have 6 episodes in season 8. Okay, so let's do that. We got 1. Oh, that's ugly. Let's use text. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we spent the first 2 episodes on just setting up characters. Oh yeah, red's the wrong color. Let's use a light blue. So the first 2 episodes were about build up, is I think what we call that. Like, it was just about slowly establishing relationships, investing emotional stakes, reminding us where everyone was and what all the alliances were. Like that's what was going on. Oh, can you see the graph? Okay. And then in season 3, we have the War for the Dawn, the entire War for the Dawn in one day. That is a short war. yeah, the Long Night. Because yeah, that's the thing. Like in the lore, like the Long Night, the last time the White Walkers came, it was it lasted a generation. It was years and years and years of like crazy stuff happening. Of darkness sweeping across Westeros, of people leading hosts of the slain, of all this like dark apocalyptic stuff happening for years. This one was one night. Night King did a lot worse off this time round. Do you think it was the same Night King? Anyway, so then, like, you know, hypothesis, if we spend the next 3 episodes dealing with Cersei, wouldn't that feel a bit silly? Like, Cersei's a more important character than the Night King, I'll say that. Cersei needs a lot of, like, dealing with, and it will also be about, you know, Jon Snow and Daenerys dealing with, you know, their relationship and their power and their tension, and Sansa, and, like, you know, there will be a lot of stuff to do. Well, there'll be a lot of stuff to do dealing with Cersei and the politics. But after all the build-up of the White Walkers and, like, the War for the Dawn and all the magic and prophecy, is that all really going to end right there? Is that really what's going to happen? I'm going to get rid of this graph because it's very ugly. But I think that's another reason for the Night King to come back. Joel says the best way to view the episode is on your phone. Yeah, you might actually be right. I mean, depending on your phone, you might get a better picture than on some like a shitty TV or like a shitty monitor. Phone screens are really good these days. V4N says expected more from Night King and Bran. A little disappointed. Yeah, I think Bran's like inactivity is one of the strongest arguments for the Night King coming back, because Bran really did spend the entire episode like he just walked into some ravens and then we didn't see him do anything again, and then he unplugged and he said like yo Theon, you're a good man, and then Arya killed the Night King. Which just like what was the point? Like, you know, Bran's whole arc was like the Three-Eyed Raven telling him like, hey, it's really important that you learn how to do shit well. It's really important. You need to be ready for the long night. What did Bran accomplish in the long night? Bran, like, he walked into some ravens at various points and he did a little bit of scouting on the dead, but I didn't see him do more than that. So yeah, I think Bran's destiny has to add up to something more than that. And there just weren't enough deaths. There weren't enough deaths. Like, are we really going to have this many people either survive or be killed by Cersei? Because those are the two options. Like, all the people who are alive now, they either have to survive the series or they die in the conflict with Cersei. Which doesn't seem right. Like, are we really going to have people like, you know, like Bran and I mean, Jaime would make sense. But you know, are we really going to have so many people survive? That would seem ridiculous. Isaac says, didn't Melisandre say that she was bringing help? Was there perhaps more happening on the other side of the world? Yeah, so Melisandre left in season 7 to go to Volantis. And Volantis does happen to be where a bunch of red priests are hanging out. Remember in season 5 when like Varys and Tyrion were passing through Volantis and they saw this red priestess preaching, and she sort of looked knowingly at Tyrion. That suggested to me that like when Melisandre went to Volantis in season 7, she was like getting the help of other red priests. All these red priests were saying that Daenerys is the savior. You know, Daenerys is Azor Ahai. Daenerys, like that's what Kinvara told us. Kinvara said that, you know, Daenerys is the chosen one. Daenerys is going to save the world. Like, if the Night King is really gone, that they're telling us that all these people were wrong, it was all a red herring, and it's just Arya who's going to save the world. And don't get me wrong, Arya's like maybe my favorite character. I think Arya's so important and interesting, and her arc is great, at least in the books. But I don't think that her arc is about or is all that connected to the Song of Ice and Fire and like the magical stuff. So that would be surprising. Patrick says, we did spend 7 seasons building up Cersei as a massive villain as well. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Cersei, I'm not saying Cersei ain't important, Like, Cersei's one of the central characters, and the conflict with her certainly involves Jaime and Tyrion in a very like deep personal way. I think like dealing with Cersei absolutely should be a huge climactic thing. I just don't think they should spend 3 episodes dealing with Cersei and 1 episode dealing with the White Walkers. That ratio just seems off to me. I mean, maybe the last episode. Oh, that's sad. Maybe the last episode will be more about like just an epilogue and like a dream of spring and like dealing with everything that happened, the aftermath, So then maybe it's only like 2 episodes dealing with Cersei and 1 dealing with the Long Night. But man, that ratio still feels a bit off to me. XAOC says in episode 2, Sam looks at Ed and Jon when they speak of there being only one left. Does that mean Jon will die? Yeah, so you're referring to that moment in the last episode where Sam, Jon, Ed were standing on the walls of Winterfell, and yeah, they did say something along the lines of like, "Oh, we're the only 3 left." I don't remember any particular knowing glance from Sam, but if you're asking if Jon will die, I think something fucked up will happen if the Night King comes back. Racer MX says, "Am I the only one who wanted to hear the Night King talk?" Yeah, so in interviews, D&D have said that the Night King will never talk because, what would he say? It would only make him less interesting to make him talk. Because, yeah, again, Night King's meant to represent, death and all these abstract forces of winter and whatnot. So, yeah, I think it makes sense for the Night King to not talk. But hey, I didn't think it made sense for the Night King to be killed by Arya in episode 3. Mason says, I think that Bran could see what needed to happen and set everything up perfectly, just like Doctor Strange. Yeah. It's impossible to not compare this to Avengers Endgame. We won't spoil anything, but I think they do parallel each other in some funny little ways. Should we do a run through the episode? Should we do like a summary from beginning to end and just sort of like look at each moment and think about each moment chronologically? I think we should do a run of that. I'll just catch up on some super chats first. And yeah, sorry, we probably won't be able to answer every single super chat, but we'll do as many as we can. Alright, so we got a super chat from Brandon saying, why was Ghost with Jorah and not protecting Bran? Yeah, well, it is odd that, it is odd that Ghost was with Jorah and the Dothraki, because Ghost is not really very, like, connected with Jorah and the Dothraki. Ghost is, like, bonded deeply to Jon. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but these kids have a history. I mean, back in season 1, episode 1, when Ghost was found by Jon in the snow, and it was like this connection, and they don't really deepen that connection so much in the show, or at least not often. But Ghost is Jon's doggo, not Jorah's. Ghost was faithful enough to stay by Jon's corpse in season 6. Defending his master's corpse, but when shit gets really dark, when things get really dire, the dire wolf is off with Jorah and the Dothraki running into the cavalry charge. That seems like an odd use of Ghost. I mean, maybe that just comes down to like filming concerns, because like from it sounds as though using Ghost in the show is expensive and difficult and annoying. So maybe it was just easier for them to like CGI Ghost into this moment here than to have him with Jon. Chris says, Bran walks into the crows, flies towards Winterfell, then up into the sky. We see a blurry vision of Night King with white eyes. We see Night King control the army to go over the fire trenches. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, because there was a sort of a weird moment of when Bran did his warging thing, and he flew those ravens. We did have this shot of the Night King on Viserion. Yeah, and RIP to everyone who thought that the Night King would go to King's Landing. I think that was an interesting idea, that the Night King would go to King's Landing, but alas, it did not happen. But yeah, there was that moment after Bran flew the ravens where the Night King looked like he was doing something magical, and I thought that he was doing that like at Bran's ravens when that happened. But maybe he was just directing the Wyatts. But yeah, it seemed like that was a moment of connection between Night King and Bran. Illid says, no God's Eye, no Secret Path, no Howland Reed, no Azor Ahai stuff. Sam didn't read any books, Bran didn't do shit, nothing makes sense, plot holes everywhere. All our smart theories went down the drain. Yeah, well, that's a cynical take. I've got hope that something more might happen. But, the show does have to simplify things. The show is trying to make a emotionally engaging drama with the core characters. And then, they're not going to bring in the God's Eye, The God's Eye is like this island that is talked about in the books because it's got like weirwoods on it, and it seems to be like a center of power for the old gods. And some people thought that the Army of the Dead would reach down to the Riverlands, and there'll be like a final stand at Harrenhal, and then like the God's Eye is going to come into the defeat of the Night King or something. Again, there isn't a Night King in the books, but I think that there should be more, and I hope that there is more, and the Night King will come back. Although I don't think we should have unrealistic expectations of, Rickon riding in on unicorns from Skargos and Howland Reed doing something, and they can't do everything from the books. Serbian6 says, Dany was awfully scared and useless once in battle. Jon stood on his 2 feet and fought. Yeah, well, that's because Daenerys doesn't know how to use a sword. Daenerys did some work on the dragon, because that's what she's experienced with, but I don't think we should be surprised that Daenerys is scared, because everyone was scared. It was a fucking zombie apocalypse. Bruno says, Dany to the Northerners in the next episode. Okay, great job everyone, what a fight. Now rest up, because tomorrow we're heading south to fight the Golden Company and get me that crown. Yeah, how does that conversation happen? Because, Daenerys has helped defeat the White Walkers, and I think she should appropriately get some credit for that, because without her Dothraki and her Unsullied and her dragons, it would have been a whole lot harder to hold off the dead. Although it was really an issue of timing, wasn't it? Because the Night King could have just turned up an hour later and he would have won. Because, the dead were just, mopping up the last of the living at that point. All of the major characters had their backs, to the walls, literally. It looked like they were rooted. And the Night King chose that moment to approach Bran. If the Night King just flew off on Viserion and just relaxed on a beach, he would have killed all the living, including Bran, So I guess, again, it's like that hubristic thing of the villain always, thinks they're invulnerable until they're not. But it just feels a little bit too comic book. But maybe that's ultimately what Game of Thrones is. Because people always harp on about Game of Thrones, it subverts tropes. It's totally unique and it never does what you expect and blah blah blah. I think people do exaggerate that to an extent. It's still a fantasy story. It's more focused on character drama and God, the word nuance, but nuanced characters and morally grey characters. That's what it's about. But that doesn't mean that it's it doesn't allow the good guys to kill the bad guys sometimes, I'm totally cool with the Night King being killed by the good guys. I just think that it needs to play into the groundwork of sacrifice that they've been going on about. Ostex says, do you think Bran was warged into Ghost during the fight? I hope not. I really hope not. I mean Bran went into warging magic after Ghost went into the charge. But maybe you're saying that's why Ghost was gone. Yeah, well, that's an interesting theory, because the question is, what was Bran doing while he was warged all this time? And we saw him fly off with those ravens. Maybe he also warged into Ghost and took Ghost off on some mission to be on the wall or something. Whatever Bran was doing while he was warged. Kimnig says, Lauren Paradefala. Okay. Rufescent Eagle, Jules says, how would the Night King return? I think that if the Night King returns, there'll be something to do with this tree in the far north where the Night King was created. I mean, let's be real. I mean, the Night King's probably died before. If the Night King could be killed by Dragonglass or Valyrian steel, surely someone in the last 8,000 years would have had a go. I mean, I guess for the last 8,000 years, the Night King was just chilling at home, safe, beyond the wall all that time. But maybe there's some mechanism for the Night King to return through the tree. But maybe not, because they're all dead. Like, it's not like another White Walker can, like, do the classic, resurrect Voldemort from a pot of stew, like in the Goblet of Fire. And without other White Walkers to do something, I'm not sure how it happens. There's a super chat from the Road Rage who says, why does Melisandre suddenly decide Arya is Azor Ahai? Yeah, well, I guess she saw it in her fires. But yeah, because Melisandre spent 4 seasons saying that, 5 seasons saying that Stannis is Azor Ahai. Then she spent a season saying Jon is Azor Ahai. Then she spent a season saying Jon and Daenerys are Azor Ahai. And then right at the end she's like, hey Arya, I reckon you better kill the Night King, suggesting that she thinks that Arya is Azor Ahai. So, she has a history of changing her mind, so, I'm not against her changing her mind again. But it just doesn't seem very sort of Azor Ahai-y, because, like, the whole idea with Azor Ahai is that, they sacrifice their love to end the night. Arya didn't sacrifice shit. She used a cool move, I'll give her that, but, it wasn't sacrifice. Znushu says, yeah, Arya makes no sense. It feels like an arse pull. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Elizabeth Tyranny says the writing felt off when it caught up with the 2 books. And there's a lot of salty people here. Barocca-Cola says, best channel on YouTube. Thank you. Only 3 episodes left. Yeah, there are 3 hours of Game of Thrones left. Or is it like 4 hours if you add up the duration? That is crazy. I think we won't know until it's over, like whether we're happy with it. I think we've got to withhold judgment. Super chat from Abby. How the heck do you organize these images? Work, tagging, screenshots. Geel says the battle felt too drawn out. Well, I think in that last sort of montage, there was like a last 10 minutes where it was just like panning over lots of different characters. Like they did like this sort of cycling thing where they just like sort of showed a brief shot of everyone like almost about to die, and they just sort of did that over and over. But I think it was pretty, it was emotionally intense watching that, I thought. And little Lyanna Mormont, my god. One of the things that I really liked about Lyanna Mormont in this battle is that she actually looked afraid. Like, I think the risk with Lyanna Mormont is her, like, acting like, a fearless, unfazable warrior 100% of the time, which just makes it hard to relate to, and just not interesting. But, like, throughout this episode, she was really, like, pissing herself, which I think, anyone would, especially someone so young. When she ran at the giant, I thought she was just going to die. I thought she was just going to get eaten. And I kind of think that brutality would have been appropriate. But instead, she kills the giant and she does the heroic thing before she dies. And I guess that's cool too. Because, she still died. There was still a cost, and I think that's appropriate. Not sure why the giant decided to pick her up. He was probably confused why such a small and noisy creature was doing so much yelling. Saraf says, where's Podrick? Yeah, we saw Podrick towards the end. Podrick is safe. Podrick's alive. Can't stop the rock, the rod, the god. Captain Crunch says, Arya killing the Night King felt underwhelming, especially as prophecies were not fulfilled. I would have liked to see Bran warg into a dragon and Sansa kill a white. Yeah, we didn't see Sansa use the blade that Arya gave her. That would have been nice if that happened, because Arya gave Sansa a blade and said stick him with the pointy end. Would have been kind of cool if she took that up, although that's not her purpose. I thought it was a bit silly when Sansa and Tyrion were like cowering behind the crypt statue. Like Sansa had said, "Oh, I'm not gonna let my people to die," and then she ended up like cowering while her people were being killed. I mean, I guess there wasn't really anything she could do, but that seemed a bit silly. I think that one thing that should pay off, I hope, is that Tyrion, while he was in the crypts, he kept saying like, we should be out there helping. We need to go and be out there, because if we were out there, we might see something that no one else can see. Which suggested to me that there was, there's some kind of secret giblets going on that's gonna change things. Like Tyrion's gonna go out and see that, the Night King has a glowing critical hit location on his bunghole, or just something that would have like shifted the balance of how the battle was going. But no. I mean, maybe that was just to sort of justify Tyrion not getting involved. Because, like, the alternative, I suppose, would have been having Tyrion, like, fighting on the walls, which would not have been, like, all that realistic. I mean, they made Tyrion, like, a good fighter at, like, Blackwater and Season 1, which seems, like, not super realistic to me. But, hey, there's undead dragons. Joseph Ward says, all the build-up, this is like if Princess Leia jumped out to stab Darth Vader because Luke couldn't get by a Rancor. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think the issue is that Arya doesn't have a relation... I mean, alright. I think the reason why it feels weird for Arya to kill the Night King is because Jon has had seasons and seasons of build-up against the White Walkers. Arya just learned what a White Walker was last week. But you could argue that Arya's storyline is about her relationship with death. Like, you had that whole scene with her in the library where she was sneaking around and doing the Assassin's Creed stuff, and she, like, threw a book as a distraction. Classic Far Cry move. And that was about her relationship with death. That was about her grappling with fear. That was about her grappling with sort of anger. And ultimately she conquered her fear, and she said, hey, death, not today. And she killed the Night King, who is an embodiment of death. I think to that extent, like, that works. Like, that makes sense. Like, if Arya was the singular protagonist of this story, that would be an appropriate end for the Night King. I think that made sense from the perspective of Arya. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense from the perspective of Jon and Daenerys. David Mann says, thanks for the excellent discussion and videos. Thank you, David Mann. Lawrence says, what do you think will happen to Bear Island now that all the Mormonts are dead? Yeah, well, as far as I recall, we've still got, what's her name? The she-bear. Because there's Elisane Mormont and there's, I forget her name, but there is another Mormont. I think it's in, Season 1, Episode 10. We get a brief glance of, Mage Mormont. This lady here, Mage Mormont, is, I think, Jorah's aunt. And she is a really cool character in the books. She doesn't really do anything in the show, but maybe Mage Mormont is running Bear Island now. Well, except the whole reason why Lyanna Mormont was in charge was because, like, presumably the other Mormonts are dead. So yeah, maybe House Mormont is over. Yeah, Jorah said, you're the future of our house. Ken G says, tonight's episode was oddly unsatisfying. Look, I thought it was a fun episode to watch. Like specifically the ending with the death of the Night King was, like, a bit, it was not a very satisfying end to all the, like, prophecy and build-up. But hey, maybe they'll change that. Maybe the Night King will come back. But I think otherwise it was a pretty intense episode to watch. I think there were a lot of visually spectacular moments. I think there was a lot of drama with the deaths that did happen, like Theon. I don't think it was a bad episode. But yeah, I'm not totally satisfied by the ending. And PJ Hawk agrees. Bragadish says, the Night King wasn't trying to kill Bran. He was trying to pledge his sword to him, and Arya ruined it. Bran's ultimate villain calling it now. Yeah, well, look, we saw the Night King kill Bloodraven in killing the Three-Eyed Raven, the original Three-Eyed Raven in Season 6, Episode 5. The Night King does want to kill Three-Eyed Ravens. Like, we saw that. This moment here, like, we had this real stare down between the Three-Eyed Raven and the Night King. And the Night King, with obvious satisfaction, killed the Three-Eyed Raven. So I don't think the Night King is secretly trying to serve Bran or anything. One moment. So yeah, I don't think he was trying to pledge to him. Sean says, is it possible that the Night King as the Great Other was just another mistaken assumption by Melisandre? Maybe the Great Other prophecy is Cersei or even Dany. They cause a lot of death. Yeah, so Melisandre, as someone who believes in the Lord of Light, she believes in, like, good versus evil, light versus dark, which is basically like Zoroastrianism. And Melisandre apparently believes that the others and the Night King and the White Walkers, they are the embodiment of death and evil and winter. And that's why she's so fanatical about opposing them. And I guess you could argue that, um, well, no, Melisandre does acknowledge that, there is evil in the human heart as well. Like, Melisandre is not only concerned with CGI ice monsters. She is interested in the battle between light and dark in the human heart. And, she does have, like, a binary opinion of it. Like, in the books, at least, there's this interesting scene where she talks with Davos about, like, who's good, who's evil. And Davos says that, well, I'm a bit of both. I've got good in me, I've got bad in me, and I think that's what people are like. But Melisandre says that, well, if an onion is only half rotted, it's a rotten onion. So Melisandre has this binary view of everyone's either good or bad. Yeah, she says that in season 2, episode 4, as well in the show. If half an onion is black with rot, it's a rotten onion. So Melisandre believes that everyone's either good or bad. But I think the ethos of the story is the opposite. It's showing that there is good and bad inside every person, and the battle of good and bad inside people is what drives the story and what makes it interesting. The battle within the human heart, and we see that more than anyone in Cersei, I think, because Cersei is one of the most, well, at least Cersei was one of the most sort of conflicted characters, because she was constantly sort of balancing, love for Jaime, love for her children, desire for power, her ambition and pride, her relationship with Tywin, her relationship with Tyrion. She was being pulled in a lot of different directions. But maybe now you can now see Cersei as an embodiment of, just pure destructive evil, because like she's lost all of her children. She's now lost Jaime, at least for the moment. And so I think the way we're meant to view Cersei now is that she's got nothing except hunger for power and just anger and hatred. So maybe you can see her like similar to the Night King as like a purely destructive force. But I don't think we'll see what Melisandre has to say about the issue anymore, because she's dead. Well, apparently. I mean, it'd be pretty weird if she got back up after lying down in the snow. Anyway, Ketchup says maybe Night King will warg into Ghost or another animal. Yeah, well, one of the interesting things in the books is that, so Jon is a warg. He can enter the mind of Ghost in the books, but only like sort of accidentally so far. But many people theorize that in the books when Jon dies, he will warg into Ghost, and his soul will be in his direwolf for a while until he's resurrected. And that could happen in the books, and I think that would be interesting. But maybe if the Night King has to have some sort of magical mechanism to come back, maybe he could appear as inside an animal, which would be funny if Jon pats Ghost and he just feels a little frostier than usual, and it's like, hey, like, what's wrong? Why are you acting so weird? There isn't some kind of White Walker in you, is there, boy? Thank you, A Tracy505, who says, why build Jon's storyline just to have him scream at a dead dragon? The way Jon was born and him being fire and ice together, hot garbage if that is how the Night King is defeated. Yeah, it's going to be interesting on the fandom, isn't it? I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction with this ending from the sort of nerdy quadrant of people who, are into like the prophecy and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you don't need to be interested in the prophecy stuff to see that there's like a strong connection between Jon and the Night King. Because that's been played up for seasons now. Like, season 7, episode 6, look at this, Jon staring down the Night King like this. Season 5, episode 8, Hardhome, you had Jon, like, staring at the Night King, and this is setting up the rivalry. And, absolutely, they can subvert that. They can, like, play with that in a different way. Like, I think it would be cool if Jon died and Daenerys killed the Night King or something. Because, Daenerys is also tied into the prophecy. She was reborn. She embodies fire against the ice. She's been told she's the chosen one by Red Priestesses, Kinvara. Arya just is not connected to that stuff as much. Melissa says, Night King is a red herring. A Song of Ice and Fire is a take on Ragnarok. It's not the story of ice versus fire, it's the story of ice and fire. All of the magical, crazy freaks versus the corrupt establishment gods. Cersei equals our big bad. Yeah, there are some interesting comparisons between Game of Thrones and Norse mythology. And yeah, maybe you can see it not as a battle of ice and fire, it's a battle of like the mundane and like the non-magical against the magical. That could be an interesting take. And I can absolutely see like Cersei being the big bad. Like, yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I'm not against the Night King dying before Cersei. Because, it's a human story. It should be grounded in the human drama. But I don't think they should beat the Night King in one episode, then spend 3 episodes dealing with Cersei. Dante says, where was Jon Royce? Did Sansa send him somewhere, or was he just not important enough? I think he was not important enough. I think Jon Royce in the show at this point mostly exists in this season for, Sansa to talk to him to show that Sansa is doing politics. I think that's kind of the point of Jon Royce. And, to be a representative of the Vale, when that's necessary. Christopher says, does Bran have a purpose in the wars to come? See, that's another reason why I think the Night King has to come back. Because, Bran... I don't think Bran's storyline can end with him just being yep, I'm just going to be a tree in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. That's just what I'm going to do. I'm just going to be a background character who says some cryptic stuff and no one really understands me, but that's just what I'm going to do. That would be a bit weird. I think Bran, at the end, should probably, if he survives, he should become a tree man. He should, connect with the weirwoods, and he should become the Three-Eyed Raven, probably. I mean, admittedly, the Three-Eyed Raven did tell Bran that you won't be an old man in a tree, you won't become like me. So then what's the alternative? Is Bran just going to be a weird robotic kid just forever and just hang around Winterfell being omniscient? What? That would be such a weird ending for Bran. So I think Bran has to do some kind of crazy magic shit, and he has not done that yet. So I think there's more coming. Dandy Z says that the showrunners said that they confirmed that Arya, they'd known for 3 years that she would be the one that kills the Night King. Yeah, well, look, maybe the Night King gets killed by Arya, and then the Night King comes back, and there's a continuation of the War for the Dawn. I could believe that. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the showrunners are lying. Although, it's interesting. So supposedly the showrunners have been working off what George Martin told them in this legendary conversation that happened in New Jersey or something, where Dan and Dave sat down with George Martin, and George Martin, explained to them how Game of Thrones ends, and the showrunners have been working towards that ending for years, and supposedly the books and the show will end in roughly the same way, based on that conversation. My question is, did George Martin tell D&D that the Night King kills Arya? That would be weird because the Night King doesn't exist in the books. And, maybe the Night King will turn up later in the books, but, I always thought the Night King was just invented by the show to serve as, a figurehead and, a visual representation of the White Walkers as a leader. And that being the case, did George Martin tell D&D that, Arya will play a really important role in, killing a leader White Walker or some White Walkers or some, yeah, I just don't know how this reconciles with the books, because if the climactic end to the Long Night is Night King, if the climactic end is Night King dies and then all of his sub-soldiers die because he raised them, we haven't seen that mechanic happen in the books at all. God, it's weird. Marley says, didn't the dead surround Bran? Did they let Arya pass to jump on the Night King? I don't know, maybe Arya climbed a tree. I find it easy to believe that Arya did some kind of crazy parkour because she's been training to do that for ages. Super chat from Justin. Do you think Dany is carrying Jon's child? So if he dies, she's queen and she's carrying his heir. Yeah, I think that would make sense. Personally, I'd be surprised if Daenerys survived the series, but I think it certainly makes sense for Daenerys to get pregnant with Jon's child, because they've been talking so much about, hey Daenerys, it's a real shame that you're infertile. It's a real bother that you can't have a baby. That's really sad. And then Jon's like, hey, do you think that witches are accurate, Wikipedia verified information, or do you think that maybe you actually can get pregnant? I think that is screaming foreshadowing that Daenerys will get pregnant, in the same way that everyone's saying that the crypts were safe is our guarantee that those zombies would rise in the crypt. So I think Daenerys will get pregnant, yeah. Sober Yaz says Bran was marked by the Night King. If the Night King returns, it's going to be Bran being infected. Yeah, I think that's a good theory. I think that it would feel a bit lame, though, if Bran's whole arc was leading up to him being possessed and he just didn't see it coming. Because, like, Bran's whole deal is that he, like, seems to know everything and he knows what's going down. But if Bran didn't see it coming that he gets taken by the ultimate evil in episode 4, that would be a bit of a failure of prediction. Alessandra says, I am 100% convinced that Sandor Olympic hammer through Arya for the final attack. Yeah, because there was that great moment when, like, Arya was afraid and she was being chased by the dead. Remember in the trailer when everyone was like, oh my god, what could Arya possibly be so afraid of? She's got all these weapons, she's got all this training. Why would Arya be scared of some regular old zombies? It must be something really terrifying, like she's being chased by undead Rickon, or she's being, she's seen the Night King, or something crazy. No, Arya was just scared of zombies, Arya was just scared of zombies. I really liked this shot, though, when Arya, like, stabs a white, and then she just sort of, like, tenderly and almost lovingly, I mean, she's being stealthy, but she has this intimate moment with death, is what this is. She's getting up close and personal, and she slowly lowers death to the ground, which, I did really enjoy the way they had Arya dancing with death this episode, as she has been all her arc. It's all about her grappling with death, and in this scene she does it literally, so I think that's cool. Remon says, do you think Bronn tries to kill Tyrion and Jaime? Look, I mean, I think it would be a ridiculous and weird ending to either Tyrion or Jaime's arcs to be killed by Bronn, but I also think it would be pretty weird if Arya killed the Night King, so hey, maybe we're all going to be surprised. Abby says, disappointed we didn't see Skeleton Ned and Lady Stoneheart. Yeah, so, I mean, Catelyn Stark's body, I don't think that ever made it to Winterfell. In the books, they throw Catelyn's body into a river, and then her gross body gets resurrected by Beric. I think in the show, Catelyn's body is just gone. Ned Stark, his bones would be in the crypt, but, like, they're just his bones, like in a chest, like with all the flesh boiled off, presumably. So I'm pretty sure the Night King can't resurrect a pile of bones into a body that can, like, ambulate. So I'm not too surprised or upset that we didn't see Ned or Catelyn. And I can also understand not bringing back Rickon, because, like, a lot of people don't even recognize Rickon or know Rickon. So I think that's fine. And I suppose I was expecting something weirder to happen in the crypts, but I think it's fine to just have the dead rise. Super chat from Pratik. How terrible is this season in your mind? Hard to fathom, but it's worse than season 7. Man, that's cynical. I think that last episode was beautiful. I think that A Night of the Seven Kingdoms was a really good, like, rumination on the character relationships, and it was, like, very in tune with the whole themes of, like, generational, bittersweet, the way that we are affected by the ghosts of the past, and the way what we're fighting for is the memory of those. I think all of that was lovely last episode. I think this episode, I think specifically the death of the Night King at Arya's hand will be a downer if that's it, if there's no further complication. I thought most of this episode was good in terms of just, like, the battle and the drama of that was appropriate. I thought that was as emotional as it should have been, at least until the end. Season 8 episode 1 was not, like, super memorable, honestly. Like, I feel like season 8 episode 2 was, like, a better version of season 8 episode 1, maybe they should have, like, combined those episodes even. But, like, I think we've got to see the end of this season's arc before we can judge it. I'm willing to wait to pass judgment. Joel says, it's possible the Night King made more to take his place with the infants that were given to him. The one he touched in past scene definitely looked like him. Yeah, well, the White Walkers have been making these babies into White Walkers, presumably. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, we assume that the way that the White Walkers reproduce is by converting babies like this. But of course, there are a lot of questions raised by that. Like, first of all, like, how do they turn a babby with blue eyes into a tall, angry White Walker? Like, do they give him like Ent draft, like in Lord of the Rings with Merry and Pippin? How do they grow up these kids into White Walkers? What does that look like? I don't know. But yeah, maybe there's a whole bunch of baby White Walkers in the White Walker nursery in the Long Night, and they're still there. But I mean, I guess they were created by the Night King, and therefore they would just die when the Night King died. So who knows? Assad says, why did the Night King try to kill Bran? Couldn't he just convert him? I haven't really seen the Night King kill anyone. Well, we absolutely did see the Night King kill the first three-eyed raven in Season 6, Episode 5. So, it is in keeping with what we've seen of his character to want to kill three-eyed ravens personally. But yeah, I mean, you'd think that it would be more interesting for the Night King to, convert the three-eyed raven into one of his. But I guess, his whole purpose is that he wants to destroy memory in the three-eyed raven, not to, preserve it. So I think that makes sense. I also, we don't know if the Night King can, convert living adult humans. We've only seen him convert babies into White Walkers and, maybe Viserion. But Viserion was, dead, so maybe he was just raising him as a white. So, I think it makes sense the Night King wants to kill the three-eyed raven. Girlhack thought that Jaime, Brienne, Grey Worm would have died. Their arcs seem complete. Yeah, no, I was surprised, and a lot of people were surprised that Jaime, Brienne, and Grey Worm all survived. I think that it's highly likely that Jaime will die dealing with Cersei in the next few episodes. I think Brienne could survive. Brienne could definitely die, given that her arc does feel done. But I think it would be satisfying enough for Brienne to survive in, Kingsguard or Queensguard, or to be, a loyal servant of Sansa as Queen in the North. I think there's a lot of satisfying ways that Brienne could end this season alive. If Grey Worm and Missandei actually get the happy ending they were dreaming of, I would be shocked, but I wouldn't be disappointed. Rainbow Gaming says there was no White Walker Hodor scene. Yeah, I think there were interviews where they suggested that they weren't going to bring back long-dead characters as zombies, if only because of, the casting would be annoying, but yeah, I'm surprised there wasn't a bit more of that. All we saw was a bunch of familiar characters becoming whites at the end. We saw zombie Ed, and we saw zombie Lyanna Mormont and a bunch of people. So we still had that gut punch in there, but we didn't see anyone. No one had to fight their undead friends. That's just a random Unsullied, not Grey Worm. Derek Bushman says 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 if Night King revealed to be Flement Brax, #Swifty Squad. Well, it's not too late. I think Flement Brax could make an appearance. If the prophecy unfolds as I expect, Flement Brax will be the prince that was promised. Nick Berry says Alice Karstark dies in the Godswood with Theon and the Ironborn. Yeah, we did see Alice Karstark near the start. She's the red-haired lady of Carhold. She's one of the lords who knelt with Ned Umber in season 6, was it? So, and yeah, she entered the Godswood and she did not return. So I guess she's dead. I don't know why Alice Karstark would be in the Godswood with Theon and the Ironborn, though. Are you sure? I mean, maybe Alice was just escorting them to the Godswood, and then Alice went elsewhere. But Alice wasn't significant enough a character to warrant a death scene, I suppose. Guadalupe says it makes sense. It wouldn't be satisfying to have a lot of main characters die to faceless whites. I expect a lot of payoffs in the last 3 episodes. Yeah, well, if Jaime and Brienne and Grey Worm die in a different way in the conflict with Cersei or otherwise, yeah, I think that's fine. I think that could work as well. I think that's a decent argument that, being killed by the dead is not necessarily the most emotionally resonant way for them to end their arcs. So I'm not against that. I just would be really shocked if all those people died fighting Cersei. I just don't know what that looks like. I mean, what are the next 3 episodes going to look like? Is Jon and Daenerys and the straggling survivors all going to march down to Night King and down to Cersei and say, hey, we'd like the throne back, please. We'd like you to vacate this uncomfortable seat. And then Cersei says no, and then what? There's a battle against the Golden Company? I mean, they've still got 2 dragons. They can just roast the Golden Company. I mean, I suppose there are the Scorpions. But look, I don't know, it would just seem so weird if, the climax against the Night King is this huge, crazy battle, and then what? Is the climax with Cersei going to be a big battle with the Golden Company? That would have to be a smaller scale battle, right? it has to be about the characters and and the emotional connection between, Jaime and Cersei, Tyrion and Cersei, Daenerys, like, having to choose, like, is she set on taking the throne at all costs, or would she ever give up the throne? Jon, would Jon become the king if he felt obliged to? Would Jon, like, dutifully be the king even though he doesn't want to? Those are the sorts of questions that will have to be swirling around these next few episodes in the conflict with Cersei. But yeah, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how that plays out in a way that plays on those character conflicts. Tom O says, what are the chances of Clegane Bowl now? I would say 200%. Call Me Shirley says, they ripped the Mass Effect 3 Leaving Earth song for this episode's The Game Revealed. And apparently this episode is called The Long Night, which is an appropriate name for the episode. I think that's probably the only thing they could have called it. Commander Nasty said, there were some cool moments in this episode, but I can't get over the fact that there was like 55 minutes of people just stabbing and slashing skeletons. I think for a 55-minute episode of people stabbing skeletons, it was executed quite well, I think. Because they made it feel varied, like they had the stuff flying around in the sky, and then they had the stuff, with Arya creeping around the library, then they had like the corridors with the Hound and Beric, and then they had, fighting on the walls with Brienne and Jaime, and then they had the Godswood with Bran, there were a lot of different environments and like different tones and paces that they played it at, so I think it was, it wasn't like it was just a really repetitive hack and slash all episode. Amber D says, are both dragons actually still alive? Apparently they are. So we saw Drogon at the end with Daenerys, and Rhaegal apparently is in the preview for next episode. Yeah, I was confused about Rhaegal's fate, but apparently the dragons are both still alive, and Viserion is the undead dragon is dead, which again shocks me. Like surely they can't have both of Daenerys' dragons survive the series. I suppose that some of her dragons could be killed by like Cersei's scorpions next episode, but again, like, wouldn't it just be so weird if the majority of the big deaths happen to Cersei, not to the White Walkers? It just seems like such a weird imbalance. Tommy Miller says that the White Walkers are standing in front of a trench and two dragons kill them. Nah, attack the walkers furthest from the castle. Horrible war tactics all around. Well, yeah, if you're looking for accurate war tactics, Game of Thrones is probably not the place to look. I mean, it was very clear from the war plan last episode, that this was a plan devised for maximum drama, not for maximum pleasing the military tacticians among us. And I think that's fine. I don't think it's the job of Game of Thrones book or show to have, like, sensible military formations and troop movements and logistics. I think that's fine. I mean, obviously they do more of that in the books than they do in the show, but like, I'm not too fussed either way, but depends on taste. I'm sure our main man Brynden B-Fish will have words to say. Brynden B-Fish writes a lot of really great Game of Thrones essays and things. Ryan says, do you think Qyburn could create the next Night King? Well, yeah, I mean, he's probably uniquely qualified. Qyburn is the mad scientist with Cersei, who created the undead mountain. Qyburn certainly has experience doing some gnarly things with dead people, but I mean, the question is one of motivation. Qyburn would not want to bring back... Well, I guess Qyburn created the mountain out of scientific interest. Like, he created this abomination just because it's like, Cersei wanted a bodyguard and he, had a penchant for the dead. So I guess Qyburn might be persuaded to do some weird magic, but like, who is going to tell Qyburn that it would be a good idea to bring back the Night King? No one. And Qyburn, is just not connected to the whole magical plot. Qyburn is connected with Cersei. So yeah, look, I don't know how or if the Night King will come back, but I would very much like to see it. Catherine says, Lyanna is Tormund Giantsbane's daughter. He fucked a bear, and she died being a Giantsbane. Yeah, that's a great point. So there actually is a really cool theory, in the books at least, that Tormund has had a relationship with Mage Mormont, who was that Well, she doesn't appear in the show, really. Because Tormund claims to have fucked a bear, and the sigil of House Mormont is a bear, and Bear Island is very close to the Wildling lands, and Major Mormont has Major Mormont has a bunch of kids, and no one knows who the father is. So, like, there's all these sort of threads that sort of line up such that it actually would make an awful lot of sense if Tormund had, like, a secret relationship with Major Mormont. Like, shipping across, because like, you don't have to cross the wall even to go to Bear Island. You just need to take a boat from Frozen Shore or wherever. So it actually would make a lot of sense if Tormund was Lyanna Mormont's father. And I don't think they're doing that in the show, but it's possible. And the fact that Tormund was just going on about killing a giant last episode. The fact that Lyanna Mormont kills an undead giant is sort of an echo of Tormund being Giantsbane. Maybe like daughter, like father, Lyanna is also a giant killer. That would be cool. Khaled says, do you think that the story goes into a closed loop? Every thousands of years, a Night King comes and tries to kill the living, and the loop can't be broken unless the Night King defeats the living. Well, that's sort of the Matrix loop, isn't it? In the Matrix, you have the machines rise up every now and then, and the one has to defeat them and sort of reset the loop, and then it just happens over and over and over with the humans in Zion almost rising up and then just getting beaten down by the machine over and over. And I think that does fit the Game of Thrones vibe of seasons, because the White Walkers are connected to winter, and what does winter do? It comes again over and over, like Podrick in the brothel. Okay, next chat. Abdullah Ali says, do you think Arya was marked by the Night King and she might be a way for him or maybe a Night Queen to come back? Yeah, well, that's interesting, because the only time we've seen the Night King make physical contact with other characters, it has resulted in magical jujus, like when Bran got marked by the Night King, and like when, Viserion was turned by the Night King, and Arya made physical contact with the Night King. Very, very close physical contact, hand on the neck. So yeah, maybe that established some kind of magical connection. Maybe Arya has been marked by the touch of death, and maybe that will, result in something. I could believe that. Mark Mac says, this episode was fantastic, and I believe D&D gave George justice with this episode. I cried, cheered, and was shook. It was beautiful, and art, which George has said is not a democracy, which it isn't, and this is. All right, more optimistic take from Mark. I think it was an emotionally intense episode, as it should have been. Like, there were a lot of moments when I was worried that characters that I loved would die, and some of them did, and I think that is the way it should be. But yeah, it remains to be seen if all the prophecy stuff turns out this way. I will note that Patreon supporters can watch past live streams. So if you're not aware how this works, like these live streams are free to watch for anyone public while they're streaming, but Patreon supporters can watch all of the live streams whenever they want. So if you'd like to do that, you can. Super chat from Random Canadian. Do you think Arya is going to take any more faces to get to Cersei or Euron? So Arya has a death list, and she seems to have let the Hound and Beric and Melisandre off her list. The only two names remaining are Cersei Lannister and the Mountain. I think that Clegane Bowl will happen. I think that the Hound will fight the Mountain, because they've all but told us that he would. We've had these threats by the Hound to his brother, and they have this history. I think they have to fight. I think it's possible that Arya will help the Hound defeat the Mountain, because the Hound said as much in like season 4. He said, "Hey, maybe we can both cross a name off our lists if we face my brother." So maybe Arya will be involved in killing the Mountain. I think it's also possible that Arya, like, I would really like to have a moment of Arya going to try and kill Cersei, but then showing Cersei mercy, because in season 6, Arya made friends with Lady Crane, who was an actor who played Cersei in a play, and Arya was sympathetic towards Lady Crane's portrayal of Cersei, and Arya showed sympathy for Cersei's feelings of anger and vengeance. So I think it would be really cool if Arya went to kill Cersei but then chose not to. I think that would be great. So then that would leave Cersei open to be killed by Jaime, which I think would make the most sense. Or maybe Cersei will just self-destruct. Maybe Cersei will just die in whatever wildfire shenanigans she pulls. That would be cool. Let's just rearrange this screen slightly so it's not quite as ugly. Matthew Lee says, love your vids. Thank you, Matthew Lee. Nick Cersei says, Cersei has green eyes. Arya could use Jaime's face to kill her, possibly. Yeah, do we want to... I mean, if we want to get into the nuts and bolts of eye color, which, you know, I don't think we necessarily should, we could work out if the people Arya kills, if their eye color lines up with the people who she has killed. Like, the Night King has blue eyes, and she killed him. What was the other color? Brown eyes. Does Meryn Trant have brown eyes when Arya killed him? Let's have a look. Meryn Trant. What's a good shot of Meryn's face so we can work out his eye color? Those look like brown eyes to me. So Arya has killed someone with brown eyes. She's killed someone with blue eyes. Has Arya killed someone with green eyes? I don't remember her killing someone with green eyes. So maybe Cersei is the person she'll kill to fulfill that. Let's have a look at Cersei's eyes. What's a good shot? Are they green eyes? They look sort of brown to me. Oh yeah, no, those are green. I reckon those are green eyes. So yeah, it could fulfill that eyes thing for her to kill Cersei. A lot of people are saying Walder Frey. Let's have a look at what color Walder Frey's eyes are. Oh, just closed the window. That was stupid. Walder Frey. Are they green eyes? Looks blue to me. Oh, maybe it's green. Yeah, hard to say. Murky. So yeah, maybe Walder fulfills the green thing as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we certainly need to pay more attention to that eye color thing, because it didn't seem significant before, but now that Arya's killed the Night King, I'd say that Melisandre's line to Arya is very significant indeed. Random Canadian says, are the Glovers going to support Jon now that they are safe and sound? So yeah, so Robert Glover, in the previous episode, we were told that the Glovers were not going to help Jon because he had given up the crown to Daenerys. And the Glovers apparently, well, they made the right choice, really. If the Glovers came to Winterfell, they probably just would have died. But they were just safe and sound in Deepwood Motte and survived as a result of their disloyalty, I guess. Darkside says, is it possible that some of the important prophecies, ancient history, and lore may have been wrong? Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the points is that the prophecy is really murky, and you know we had like the stallion who mounts the world in season 1. Like we were told that Daenerys's child with Drogo was going to take over the world. That didn't happen. And you know all of the prophecy is deliberately murky. Like Melisandre interprets the prophecies wrong. Melisandre thinks that Stannis is Azor Ahai. And that doesn't work out. So yeah, so it absolutely is a thing that, you know, prophecies are often misinterpreted, and prophecies are hard to interpret and are vague, and sometimes they don't turn out at all, like the stallion who mounts the world. I just think it would be a real downer if like the biggest prophecy of like the prince that was promised was just ignored entirely. Like I think it should be fulfilled in a weird way or a tragic way or an unexpected way. But having the prince that was promised not be a thing, I think, is not satisfying. And I think that's why the Night King has to come back. Sarang says, every winter was when the Night King marched against the Three-Eyed Raven. Every summer was when he went back to contemplate defeat. Yeah, I think tying the Night King into the seasons is a good idea. I mean, I'll note that, there have been lots of winters when the Night King didn't come, so it's not necessarily like literal like that, but the idea of the Night King being something that repeats and seasonal is cool. But again, like, the Night King was created by the children of the forest. There were thousands of years of winters before there was ever a Night King. I mean, maybe like now that the Night King is dead, the seasons will be more regular again. Because remember, Westeros is a world where seasons last years and they are irregular. Sometimes winters are 5 years, sometimes they're 1 year. Maybe now that the Night King is dead, the seasons will be back to 1 year. They'll be normal. That could be interesting. Tom O says that Jon's walk through Winterfell was interesting. He decided not to save Sam, and they went to face Viserion alone. Yeah, that was a really interesting bit when everything was grim and Jon was walking through Winterfell, and Sam was whimpering. The subtitles said Sam was having a bad time, and Jon just kept walking. He left his friend in the hands of the Whites. Left him to die, it looked like, because I suppose Jon knew that the only way he could really help his friend was by facing the Night King. But in the end, he didn't do that, did he? He just hid from a dragon. Alexei says, Arya is Azor Ahai, the prophecy about beginning of House Stark, kings in the north, and forging Valyrian steel. Cat's paw is what's left of Lightbringer. Yeah, well, one of the interesting things about the cat's paw blade is that it appears in a book that Sam found. So this book here, in season 7, episode 1, damn it, I need to pull up a window. Let's pull that up. Cat's paw. In season 7, episode 1, there is a book that has the cat's paw blade in it, and it's a very old book about like Targaryen stuff. And so, yeah, there it is. Let me pull that up. In this book, this like really old book, there's a picture of the very dagger that Bran gives to Arya that she uses to kill the Night King. That dagger right there. And so people speculate as well, maybe this dagger was brought by the ancient Targaryens to Westeros. Maybe this was Aegon the Conqueror's personal blade or something like that. Like, that would be cool. And yeah, wouldn't it be cool if the blade of Aegon the Conqueror was used to kill the Night King? Because there was this thing that there was this thing that the Night King there was this thing that George R. Martin said in a recent like promo video thing, where he said that, some fans have speculated that Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros for the fulfillment, in order to protect Westeros from the White Walkers, is what George Martin suggested. So Aegon the Conqueror was the guy who came and took over Westeros for the Targaryens 300 years ago. And George Martin like hinted and suggested that maybe he did that with some kind of foreknowledge of the White Walkers. And if it is the case that Aegon the Conqueror brought this dagger, the same dagger that ended up killing the White Walkers, well, that might suggest that Aegon was right in some way. So that would be cool. That would tie into the lore. Esper says, can't Arya just go to King's Landing and assassinate Cersei? They have nothing supernatural to stop her from infiltrating, stealthing, and disguising. Yeah, I agree, and I think it would be like relatively easy for Arya to kill Cersei, and that's why I think it would make sense for Arya to choose not to kill Cersei and to show mercy. Because you're right, like if Arya can take on the Night King, I think she's more than qualified to kill Cersei. Dante says, what system/software are you using to tag your screenshots? I am using a super secret program called Windows Explorer. No, it's literally just a folder full of screenshots, and it's named. All right, it is kind of complicated because After Effects, there's like this custom script that saves with the timestamp of each clip. Like they're like After Effects video clips of all of these bits of every episode, but they're named, and they also generate these screenshots. All right, yeah, no, it actually it kind of is a bit complicated, but the result is that I can search any keyword and get like every shot from Game of Thrones. Well, the ones that have been custom tagged, which takes time. Anyway, that's not interesting. RKURZ says, is the story of the Lord of Light over now? Where does he fit into the story if the Night King doesn't return? Yeah, well, what is the sort of magic philosophy of Game of Thrones? Like, will it end with light winning and darkness losing? You know, will it just be like a binary good beats evil thing, or will it be some kind of like, ooh, there must always be good and there must always be evil? The White Walkers will persist, and summer and winter will continue to cycle. There's a lot of different ways they could play it. I know I keep repeating myself, but I think that what it's about sacrifice, and I think that someone has to die so the rest can keep living, and I don't think that happened this episode. Lucas says, maybe the Night King should not have died, and it makes the world unbalanced, and the Lord of Light becomes the last villain. Yeah, so maybe the Night King really is dead, but some other evil emerges as like an equal and opposite reaction, as a direct result. That could be interesting. Tejo says, doesn't Arya cover the prophecy about being born amidst salt and smoke, since she was born during the same year as the Greyjoy Rebellion? I mean, that's... I mean, there are some pretty tenuous ways of like fulfilling the prophecy. Like the salt and smoke thing, most people think refers to Dragonstone, and since Daenerys was born on Dragonstone, it makes sense for her to be Azor Ahai. And I guess maybe you can say that since there was smoke and salt in the same year that Arya was born. I mean, I guess, but I mean they haven't mentioned the smoke and salt in the show, so it's probably not super relevant. But I mean, if you want to talk about salt and smoke, you should talk about the ghost of Highheart, who prophesied that Azor Ahai would be born of the line of Aerys and Rhaella, which means Jon or Daenerys, not Arya. So I don't know if we can really use the book text to justify Arya being Azor Ahai. Ale says, Jon standing up to Viserion and accepting his death was such a Jon thing to do. He really hates the idea of dying like a coward. Yeah, it kind of feels like Jon has been trying to die lately, like with all of the ridiculous sacrifices he's been making. Like, remember in season 7, episode 6, when Jon like took a dunk in the ice water? When like Daenerys is like, hey, get on my dragon and fly to safety, and then Jon was like, nah, I just want to kill a few more zombies, like I just want to get my KD a bit higher. Like this moment here where Jon just kept on fighting, and then he fell into this pond when the whites hugged him, and he took a really frosty bath, and then somehow he just climbed back out again and got saved by Benjen. Like, Jon has been through some ridiculously dangerous situations and survived. I think that the show should just let him do what he wants to do and sacrifice himself to save the world. I think that has to be what happens to Jon. So I'd like to see that happen. Stefan says, what was Bran doing with the Ravens? Did Bran go back in time to give Arya that dagger? Ooh. So yeah, I guess that's an interesting interpretation of the cat's paw thing, because we know that this blade comes from the past somehow, or it existed in the past. And maybe Bran did some timey-wimey stuff to get it. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just an old dagger. We know that Valyrian steel lasts, so, I don't think we need time travel to get that dagger. But I certainly do think that Bran knew something when he gave that dagger to Arya. I think this moment of Bran giving Arya the dagger was a moment of Bran knowing that she would use it to kill the Night King. Rulados says, Daenerys' army regenerates like a stack of Civ warriors at 1 HP, so we can get 5 more episodes of CGI armies getting thrown into each other. Yeah, I desperately hope that that's not what happens. I think a really disappointing way to end the series would be if Jon and Daenerys march south with some inexplicable army of surviving Dothraki and Unsullied and Northerners, and then they fight the Golden Company, and then Cersei's like, come at me, bro, and then Jaime Valanquas her, and then it's over. I mostly just think, I mean, it as long as they do it in a way that's centered around the drama and the relationships and characters being conflicted, you know, like, and I think, you know, people have been speculating about like, oh, what if Tyrion betrays Daenerys and joins Cersei or something like that, or if, you know, Jaime switches back or something like something along those lines. I think should happen, because there needs to be some kind of stakes where one of the, you know, quote unquote good guys is actually in conflict. Because if it's just everyone versus Cersei, and the good guys defeat Cersei, then that's not interesting drama, you know. We'll see what happens. Super chat from Hatia says, what about Jorah sacrificing himself for Dany? Well, yeah, that's true. This episode was not without sacrifice. You know, and Theon died, like, sort of directly, Theon died directly before the Night King was killed by Arya. And, you know, maybe you can say that, you know, the 5 seconds that Theon bought by sacrificing himself was what Arya needed in order to give her the time to come and kill the Night King. You know, maybe Theon is Nissa. Maybe Theon is the big prophetic sacrifice that's needed to kill the White Walkers. But that, I think, would be a bit weird. Walker Lay says, what houses do you think are going to join Dany and Jon against Cersei? Well, yeah, so Cersei, so Daenerys, I think, did prove herself to the North in some sense in this episode, which I think is what she needed to do. Because without Daenerys and her dragons carving up the army of the dead, there's no way anyone would have survived this battle, let alone, you know, the Northerners and stuff. So if this is about Daenerys winning over the loyalty of some Northern lords, and, you know, maybe winning Sansa's loyalty, I mean, Sansa didn't see anything, but, like, if ever there was a time for Sansa to go, all right, Dany, you're all right, it should be now, after she's, you know, accomplished something to help the living. So maybe Daenerys will inspire the loyalty of some of the Northerners. But I mean, I don't think the Northerners should go marching south to defeat Cersei. That's not their fight. You know, the Northerners have been through so many wars, and all they've wanted is just to, you know, survive and have an independent North, and to, you know, not die, thank you very much. I don't think it's really in their interests to take out Cersei. I think Daenerys and her dragons and whatever soldiers she's got left should be sufficient. Julius says, did we get anything as to what Tyrion was up to with Bran last episode? Yeah, he seemed suspiciously useless, Julius says. Yeah, so Tyrion did nothing this episode, except for that, you know, touching moment with Sansa. And I agree that that's weird, and it is weird also that Tyrion had that conversation with Bran last episode. It was a very sort of conspicuous moment when they sat down together and had a chat, except we didn't get to see what about. Let me pull that up. Bran Season 8, Episode 2. They had that conversation and we didn't see what they talked about. And, you know, there was an interview in the Still Watching podcast, which is a really good podcast that everyone should listen to. Still Watching Game of Thrones. And they had an interview with Brian Cogman, who wrote last episode. And Brian Cogman said, well, you know, they just talked about Bran's journey. And then the interviewer, Joanna Robinson, was like, but really? Like, they didn't say anything important, like critical for, like, the war that Tyrion now knows and he might use later? And Brian Cogman's like, oh, well, you know, I couldn't say anything about that. So, you know, maybe he was being coy, and maybe there was some conversation, and maybe, you know, maybe Brano was like, hey, don't worry about this whole White Walker situation. My boy Arya will sort it, but don't tell anyone, because otherwise that'll stop the future from happening. We don't want to do a Back to the Future. And Tyrion was like, well, all right, I'll just sit tight in the crypts while you save the world. Maybe that happened. Steve Ross says, can Arya wear the Night King's face? Could she use that to confuse Cersei's army? Well, I don't think that Arya could wear the Night King's face, because the Night King's face is a fucking snow cone at this point. Look, it got burst into CGI. I mean, maybe she could, do an Elsa and build a snowman out of the chunks, and but I don't think she can wear it as a face. No. Steve also asks if Bran can warg into multiple ravens, if he's done that before. Yeah, he has done that before. Season 7, episode 6, he warged into a bunch of ravens, and scouted around. Did a bit of this, and I'm surprised that Yeah, look, one of the big mysteries of this episode is the fact that Bran warged into a bunch of ravens, and then the ravens flew off, and then we didn't see Bran or his ravens do anything else for the rest of the episode. I think that is a strong hint that, like, something fucky is going on here. Zenith says, do you think Tyrion will side with Sansa as husband and wife, betrayed for love? That's interesting. So, yeah, I mean, we did have that intimate moment between Tyrion and Sansa here, which I thought was lovely. And that does sort of suggest that, Tyrion's loyalty is sort of closer to the Starks. And maybe if Sansa is still opposed to Daenerys, which I don't think she should be after everything that just went down, maybe Tyrion will side with Sansa against Daenerys. That could be interesting. And, there is that prophecy of Daenerys being betrayed, once for love and once for gold and once for blood or whatever it was. Maybe Tyrion could be the betrayal for love for Sansa. But I mean, there was also a conversation in the crypt when Tyrion, like, Sansa said that Tyrion's love for Daenerys was a problem, I think was what she said. And that suggests to me that Tyrion's loyalty to Daenerys is still strong, and stronger than his loyalty to Sansa, I would think. Barry thought for a second that Tyrion and Sansa were making a suicide pact. I sort of thought they were about to, like, burst out and attack the Whites. Because, like, it really stuck in my head when Sansa said, I will not, retreat. I will protect my people. And then while Sansa's people were being slaughtered by the zombies, she hid behind a statue. Like, shouldn't she be defending her people somehow? So, yeah, but I guess the White Walkers died before then. Anessa says, if Arya was marked and ends up as the next Night Queen, Jon could sacrifice Arya, which would stop another long night and kill somebody he loves. That's an interesting idea. I think it would be kind of surprising and weirdly magical if, like, Arya transforms into a White Walker over the next couple episodes. But yeah, I mean, I do think that it's significant that Arya was, touched by death in this way. Like, Stranger Things season 1 spoilers, but remember when what's his name, went into the Upside Down, the boy Will, and he escaped the Upside Down, but then he was, coughing up slugs and, like, kept flickering into the Upside Down and had some kind of inextricable connection to this evil force that remained even after the evil seemed defeated. I think that would kind of make sense for Arya. And, I think, like, one of the other questions is, like, is Arya able to, like, get past her her trauma and the shit that she's been through, and is she able to reconnect with humanity? I think that she is going to be even less, like, warm and fuzzy after this, Or maybe the opposite. Maybe Arya has, defeated her demon. She's, like, slain this representation of death, and she's now free to, like, love and reconnect again. Maybe Arya will become more human after this moment. I think that could make sense as well. The Hump J Bear says, how did they see the White Walkers at the end of last episode when we couldn't see them at the beginning of this episode? Because they're just trying to make it look cool, man. And I don't think anyone even could see. The horns blew at the end of last episode because they saw the White Walkers coming. That's true. So yeah, they're sort of inconsistent with that, I suppose, but they're just being dramatic. Andrew H. says, do you think the Red Woman will bring Unsullied, Dothraki, and the rest of the Northmen back to life by her death? Damn. That would be big. It was very cool when Melisandre lit those araks at the start of the battle. She lit all of the Dothraki's weapons before they charged into the dark. I thought that was very cool. I think, it was the last frame, wasn't it? The last shot of this entire episode was Melisandre dead in the snow. So I suppose that could be the prelude to some kind of magic arising from her death. But I think we already saw Melisandre do the sacrifice that she needed to make, and to send Arya off to kill the Night King. Melisandre's sacrifice was her life. Melisandre doesn't need to be stabbed with a sword to have like a dramatic sacrificial ending. Her whole life, she was clinging on to life, in this artificial glamoured body. She was exhausted, she was ready to die, and she'd been ready to die for centuries, but she was clinging to life in order to fulfill her god's will, She's like the ultimate priestess. I think her death is very appropriate. I think her sacrifice is done. I don't think she needs to make further magical wagicals necessarily. Alex makes a super chat and asks Amanda to marry him. Alex says he'll forever be your Jorah. I don't think we've ever had a proposal in a Alt-Shift-X chat before. I think that's very exciting. Everyone, you shouldn't do these proposals publicly like this, Alex. It can be very embarrassing and emotionally, loaded to do a proposal like that. But hey, there you go. Maybe Amanda will accept your proposal. Teep Faf says, there are definitely other whites that are attacking King's Landing while the dragons are all distracted. They showed the white army being much bigger with a lot more giants. That's what Bran was doing. Yeah. They could start next episode with Bran saying, "Hey, we might have killed the Night King, but there's still zombinos out there. There's a long night 2.0 about to happen." I think the problem with that would be that they've showed us the logic of if the Night King and the White Walkers are killed, all of their whites are killed. So they should all be dead, unless there was another independent Night King who's totally separate from the rest of them. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I still think that the Night King will come back, or should come back, but I don't think there'll be a bunch of zombies off on a zombie mission right now. We have a super chat from Melissa who said, "I thought there was going to be an epic battle." Come on, Melissa. It was a pretty good battle. I thought. In my opinion, it was a pretty good battle. I have questions about the end, but Mendel Films says, "Is Jaime Azor Ahai? Is Cersei the big bad? Is that still possible?" Yeah, I don't think Jaime is the Azor Ahai. Maybe there are multiple people who fulfill Azor Ahai in different ways, and I think it is possible that one of the fulfillments of that is Jaime killing his love Cersei. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think Cersei certainly is a big bad, whether she is a magical White Walker-y big bad or not. But I don't expect Jaime to, wield a flaming sword, necessarily. Hagmeister says, "Could the Catspaw Blade hold the Night King's life force? And if Arya kills anyone with Catspaw, they will become the new Night King / Queen." I think that would be a confusing mechanic to use. But I would like to think that a blade that kills a Night King would be changed somehow. There is an interesting parallel you remind me of. There is a old sci-fi or fantasy series called Eldrick of Melniboné, I think it is. And Eldrick of Melniboné has inspired Game of Thrones in a lot of ways. Is it Edric or Eldrick? And he's like this albino character who is very reminiscent of Bloodraven, the three-eyed raven from the books. And he wields a blade that captures the souls of those he slays. And it's all very sort of, grimdark and edgy, but it inspired Game of Thrones in a bunch of ways. And the idea of the Catspaw blade holding the soul of the Night King is sort of reminiscent of that, I suppose. We have a super chat from Kent who says, "What's your prediction for Qyburn?" Yeah, I suppose Qyburn has to have some sort of a death scene, doesn't he? Because Qyburn is way too dangerous to live, what with his, love of necromancy and unethical experiments. Maybe he'll just flee to the east or something at the end. Qyburn is kind of like the worm tongue of Game of Thrones, I suppose. And I don't know, maybe he'll just get burned up by the dragons, or whenever Cersei's downfall happens, maybe Qyburn will go along with them. I don't expect Qyburn to play a huge role. I think it's possible that Qyburn might roll out some further invention or something that helps fight against Daenerys' dragons. I think that's likely. I mean, they keep on showing us in the opening sequence, Qyburn's scorpion pointed at dragon skulls. So I think he'll continue to be useful against the dragons for Cersei. But yeah, I mean, Qyburn's not a very important character. I think he's mostly someone for Cersei to talk to this season. All right, I think we're going to wrap this stream up shortly. Thank you all so much for participating this episode. Man, it's a doozy, I'll say that. We are, of course, going to make a Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 3 Explained video, which is going to be fun. And it's going to be a weird video, actually, because, like, this entire episode was like an action movie. So that's kind of hard to break down in the same way that Alt-Shift-X usually breaks stuff down. But yeah, we'll see how that goes, and we'll try and get it out sooner than the previous episodes have been. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, we'll just try and answer some more super chats. And I apologize to everyone who asked a question who we can't answer. It's physically not possible to answer everything. But I'll just run through and try and answer as many as I can. And then we'll close up the stream. Alex Mason says that Amanda said yes. Did we just have a marriage proposal successfully happen on an Alt-Shift-X live stream? Did that really happen? If that actually happened, someone Alex, please tweet me later. If you actually just got engaged, I mean you don't need a chat now. If you got something more important to do, but if you actually just got engaged on an Alt-Shift-X stream, let me know, because that's great. Congratulations. It's probably a joke. Marissa says, notice Sam looking at Jaime through the flames. Well, I mean, there was a lot of people looking at a lot of other people through flames this episode. There was flames everywhere. It was the only place you could look. But hey, maybe it's significant. Maybe that means Jorah will sacrifice Cersei as Azor Ahai or something. I don't know. Mitchell says, with the end of episode 3 and knowing what we know, how do you predict the show will end? I feel like we know less now than we did before, just because I feel so strongly that I don't know, but I think it would make sense for some kind of weird twist with the Night King coming back. I mean, someone mentioned in the chat before, there was that whole thing of supposedly when George Martin told D&D the whole end game of Game of Thrones, and that's the plan that D&D have apparently been following. They said that there were 3 big shocking twists from that conversation. So after the point of season 5 or whatever. And what he said was Shireen being burned was one of the crazy twists, and I think it was it the R+L=J reveal? Was it Jon's parentage reveal was the second big twist? And then there has to be a third big twist. And what will that third big twist be? There hasn't been one in Season 8 yet. Maybe it could be the return of the Night King or something. Or maybe it'll be something involving Cersei and some betrayal by Tyrion or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think some more stuff has to happen. Everett says, what are your predictions for Varys after Melisandre said he would die? Yeah, so Varys also didn't do anything this episode. He hasn't really done anything this season. I think that the problem is that Varys in the books has this really sort of complex conspiracy based around the Blackfires, and he's trying to install this kid as king, a kid who isn't in the show. So I think that's why Varys doesn't really have much of a role in the show, is because they're just not using his plot from the books. But yeah, Daenerys promised to burn Varys if he betrays her, and Melisandre said that Varys would die in Westeros. So I guess the most obvious possibility is that Varys will betray Daenerys and get killed for it. So maybe Daenerys starts acting a bit too Bernie and a bit too Mad King-like, and as a result, Varys loses faith in Daenerys and stops supporting her, and that's why he dies. I think that's a possibility. But I mean, when Melisandre says you will die in Westeros, that doesn't mean you'll die this season. He could die of, at the age of 80 with a belly full of wine and a girl's mouth on his stump. I mean, it's possible that Varys could have a relatively happy ending. Maybe Varys will survive. Ricardo says, do you think they are going to show a reunion between Sansa and the Hound? Yeah, they really should, shouldn't they? Because Sansa and the Hound have quite a emotionally charged relationship. Remember in season 1, the Hound was one of the only people who showed kindness to Sansa. When Meryn Trant was beating Sansa, the Hound, took a cloth and dabbed the blood off her lips and, advised her to, be safe, basically. And then at the end of Blackwater, the Hound offered to take Sansa to safety. The Hound offered to do something sort of selfless and to help Sansa. And in the books, Sansa remembers the Hound kissing her in that scene. Although when you read that scene, the Hound doesn't kiss her, so they call it the unkiss, and it's sort of this mysterious, unreliable narrator sort of a thing. But the point is that, yeah, there is this sort of closeness between Sansa and the Hound, and it would be nice to acknowledge that. And I think they will acknowledge that, because the Hound and Sansa are both alive at Winterfell. I think they should have some interaction and conversation at some point. RMPTY says, good guys versus Golden Company is like Children of the Forest versus the First Men. Bran will, as a last resort, create a Night King to fight for them. Yeah, so RM is suggesting that Cersei, is way stronger than the good guys, and therefore the good guys will have to do something really crazy in order to defeat her. I don't think they'd do anything as crazy as creating a Night King, even if they could. I'm also not convinced that Cersei's stronger than the good guys at this point. Cersei has the Golden Company, this strong army, whereas the northern good guy armies are, presumably all but depleted. But Daenerys still has 2 dragons, and the good guys, like Jon and Daenerys, have a habit of, sort of pulling armies out of their ass when needed. And, the White Walkers only made it to Winterfell, so presumably the whole, southern half of the north is still intact, or at least as intact as it was. So they should be able to get something of an army if they needed it. And yeah, Arya could totally go and assassinate Cersei. That would be within her skill set, I would think. So I'm not convinced that it would be necessarily difficult for Jon and Daenerys to defeat Cersei, but I'm sure the show can make it difficult if they want to. Matt Mason says, do you think the babies that the Night King took from Craster will factor in? Well, I think they did, because I think that most of the White Walkers that we see, or many of them, were Craster's babies who were converted into White Walkers, and I think those White Walkers are now dead when the Night King died. Matt says, is Melisandre a faceless man? Well, she does do some magical disguises, doesn't she? And she takes off her disguise at the end when she dies. Maybe that uses a similar kind of magic to the magic of the faceless man. But I think it uses a kind of magic called a glamour, is what they essentially say in the books. Whereas Arya physically wears the flesh of the faces she's removed. That's how her magic works. So I think that is a different kind of magic. I don't think Melisandre is a faceless man. Matt asks how Arya and Melisandre are connected. Well, Melisandre saw some kind of destiny for Arya. She might not have fully realized in season 3 that she would kill the Night King. Well, yeah, she definitely didn't realize that. But Melisandre presumably got that knowledge by looking into the flames. That's how Melisandre, sees the future as a fire priestess, is to gaze into the fire, and the Lord of Light speaks to her. So presumably that's what happened with Arya. Melisandre got some kind of knowledge that Arya was important, and it was only towards the end that Melisandre sort of realized, oh shit, Arya is the gal who's gonna do it. Thank you, Ed Burton. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan says, do you think a trial by 7 might happen? So yeah, in the books, there's a trial by combat for Cersei looming that seems to be about to happen. And Cersei's planning to use the Mountain to fight for her in a trial by combat against the Faith. And Lancel Lannister might be the person who fights the Mountain. And it will be pretty shocking if Lancel survived the Mountain. I don't think a trial of 7 will happen here in season 8, though, because the faith seems kind of out the window, what with the Pope having been blown up and everything. And also, the people who are running the show at this point, people like Cersei, Jon, and Daenerys and Tyrion, none of those people have the faith of the 7. I mean, Daenerys doesn't really show much interest in any particular religion apart from the religion of Daenerys should be queen. Jon follows the old gods, if anything. Tyrion follows tits and wine. I don't think anyone's going to be saying, hey, let's invoke the faith of the 7 to judge Cersei. But, I guess some kind of a trial by combat might be possible. Like, maybe Cersei will, ask for a trial, and the good guys, since they're stupid good guys, they'll say, well, let's put Cersei on trial, let's give her a chance to survive. And maybe Cersei will choose the Mountain as her champion, and maybe the good guys will choose the Hound as their champion, and maybe Clegane Bowl will decide the fate of Cersei Lannister. Crazier things have happened. Kachomsky says, the neck is a nightmare environment, and it's difficult to march through the neck, and therefore it will be difficult for Cersei to attack the north. Yeah, well, my assumption was that Jon and Daenerys will come south to King's Landing, not that Cersei will go north to Winterfell. Because, it is very difficult to get southern troops into the north, because there's that geographical bottleneck called the neck, which is swampy and full of crannogmen and is just a pain in the ass. I don't think it would make a lot of sense for Cersei to attack the north. I think it makes more sense for Daenerys to want to go south and get her bloody crown, because Daenerys has been delaying all this time. She's wanted the throne. She got a bit distracted by the zombie apocalypse, but now it's over, so now she's like totally set on getting the throne, you would think. So I would imagine she's going to hop on the first dragon south and do it. AK says, how exactly do you think the Night King will return? Like, how would that work? It doesn't necessarily need to be like the same Night King, necessarily. It doesn't need to be like the same dude. I'm just thinking that, like, it's possible that the force that animates the White Walkers, whatever magic underlies them that was created by, the children of the forest, that, is represented by this, mysterious spiral. It seems to be embodied in this tree where the Night King was created. And, Bran had a vision going to this place where the tree is. And so I think that, they killed the Night King, so all the White Walkers he created are dead, all the Whites they created are dead, fine. But that tree is presumably still up there, and maybe this tree still represents some kind of like magical power that remains. We had the vision in season 8 episode 1 when that spiral representative of that tree burned. Maybe that represents what needs to happen for the Night King to be truly defeated, Maybe this tree needs to be physically burnt. George R. R. Martin said that in the next book, The Winds of Winter, the characters will go further north, or we will see further north than we have ever seen before. This tree is far in the north. And maybe, in order to finally defeat the Night King and finally end the White Walkers and win the War for the Dawn, they will need to go to that tree. Maybe Daenerys will need to sacrifice herself and fly to the far, far, far north, and destroy that tree, and that's how it'll finally end. I think that would make sense. Joe says, do you think we'll see a return of Daario and the Second Sons to help Dany take King's Landing? I would be shocked if we saw Daario again, but I would kind of love it. Because Daario was just used to like tie up the Marine plot in a way that I think was like not very plausible. But they were getting rid of that character. If he came back and abandoned Slaver's Bay out of like love for Daenerys, but like disobeying her order to stay there, like I don't know. I don't know if Daario's important enough for that to happen. But I mean, if the good guys do need an army, I suppose the Second Sons could work. So fucking American says there are only 3 episodes left. That's not enough time to resurrect the Night King, deal with it, and resolve it. Also while tackling Cersei. Yeah, but everyone thought that 1 episode wasn't enough to deal with the Night King, and that turned out to be wrong. I could imagine Next episode, they go south to King's Landing and they like set up a fight with Cersei that's about to happen. And you know they start to engage like Daenerys and Jon against Cersei. And then at the end of that next episode, it turns out that the Night King is back and the White Walkers are like very real and a real problem. Like, you know, maybe the dead, maybe the people of King's Landing get turned into whites, and so there's a new army of the dead at King's Landing, and then all of the threats converge, and then they have to like deal with them over the next 2 episodes. I could see that happening. Like that's what I hope happens. But maybe it won't. Maybe they'll just spend the next 3 episodes on Cersei. Malice says, what happened to Mira Reed and where is Howland Reed? Well, Mira Reed went back to her home in the Neck, and Howland Reed, her father, is, I guess, still there, but I mean, Howland Reed is not really a character in the present. He's never appeared in the present in the show or in the books, so I don't expect to see Howland Reed. Logan says, do you think a big twist is yet to come? Bran doesn't seem so thrilled about winning. Well, Bran hasn't seemed thrilled about anything since season 1. What does Bran know that he hasn't told us? Yeah, well, I think maybe this might be the end of Bran's foresight. I think that Bran might have, you know, known that Arya would kill the Night King, and he's been sort of setting up the pieces for that to happen. But maybe Bran doesn't see whatever the next thing is, if there's a next thing from the White Walkers. And Logan reminds us of Daenerys' vision of Snow on the throne, which, yeah, I still think is enormously important. We saw this vision of... Daenerys had this vision of entering the throne room and approaching the Iron Throne and reaching for the Iron Throne and then not taking it. And I think this suggests at the very least we need a dragon to burn King's Landing. And, you know, maybe that'll be Daenerys attacking King's Landing with her dragons and getting a bit too burny and getting a bit too Mad King and getting a bit too tyrannical. And maybe Daenerys will, you know, become a bit of an antagonist to some degree. And, you know, maybe that's why Varys will leave her and betray her. And maybe that might be why Tyrion might leave Daenerys. Like, Daenerys could get real mad at Cersei if there's some kind of gridlock and she needs to really burn shit up in order to dislodge Cersei. Maybe that will happen. But, you know, the last shot is of Daenerys not taking the throne and walking away and leaving it, which I think suggests sacrifice. So maybe Daenerys will need to sacrifice herself to defeat whatever new White Walker threat emerges, if a new White Walker threat emerges. Sneaky Penguin says, I believe in an interview the director said that the symbol the Night King made with body parts was a fuck you to the children of the forest. Yeah, that was an interview that happened. Because the spiral was a symbol of the children of the forest. It was one of their sort of sacred religious symbols, and they used this symbol in the creation of the Night King. And now the Night King replicates this symbol as a sort of a perverse way of saying, hey, screw you. Like, I'm taking your religious symbol and I'm perverting it as my own. That I think is what the meaning is meant to be of it. But you know, if that symbol still remains in the form of this tree out here, maybe there's some possibility of that perversity persisting. Stephen says, why did Bran turn into crows? He didn't do anything. What was the point? Good question. That's one of the reasons why I think the Night King might come back. The fact that Bran, for all of his magic, just flew some ravens somewhere. We didn't see where. And then, like, where did that lead? Maybe we'll find out. Lucas says, Melisandre brought up that eyes thing, implying that she knew about the Night King killing, yet she still focused on Jon and Dany. Yeah. So maybe that supports the idea of the Night King coming back. Like, if Melisandre knew that Arya would like be really important to kill the Night King, yet Melisandre was also interested in Jon and Daenerys, yet Jon and Daenerys didn't do anything much this battle from the perspective of the Night King specifically, so maybe that's a reason to believe that Jon and Daenerys will still have some big role in beating whatever returned Night King happens. Maybe. Thank you to Lucas. That was Lucas's comment, and Logan. All right. Apologies again to those super chats and questions we couldn't answer. Thank you, Goose A. Amjad. And I think we'll wrap it up for real about now, because it's time to start working on this video. Someone asks what episode this shot is. This is season 6, episode 5. It's when Bran plugs into the Weirwoods and has a vision and walks around and gets mocked by the Night King. Okay, so what is there to say? So this episode was fucking wild. It was surprising. Arya killing the Night King is a huge shock. Maybe that's how it ends, but I think given the sort of prophecy and the foreshadowing and the lead up, this might not be the last we've seen of the Night King. Not a whole lot else that was super like character critical happened. Like I liked the connection between Tyrion and Sansa. I think Jorah's sacrifice was exactly what he and we could have hoped for. I think Theon's death was very appropriate. I think Ed's death is fine. And Melisandre's death, I think, was perfect. So even if the White Walkers don't come back, I think this was a perfectly good episode. I still feel like something more needs to be explained or more needs to be revealed with the White Walkers, but maybe we'll spend the next 3 episodes with Cersei. We'll have to wait and see. All right, thank you all very much for taking part in this live stream. It's been real, and we'll get a new episode out. Remember, we're doing these live streams right after every episode of Game of Thrones. Please do keep on tuning in. As we said, Patreon supporters can watch these live streams after they've been broadcast. And remember that you can get Alt-Shift-X merch now. We've got merchandise, we've got t-shirts, and we've got pins. Let me pull that up real quick. So if you want to be the most fashionable Game of Thrones nerd in the room, you can achieve your dream, because we've got sexy blue X's, and we got they're white X's actually. Here we are. We got shirts and pins. Check them out. That is at standard.tv/AltShiftX. The link is in the description if you would like to buy some merchandise. And I'll chuck that in the chat. But my poor voice is tired, and I'll go have a nap. All right, thank you everyone. Have a good one, and tune in next time. Cheers.